Okay, good evening, folks. We have a quorum. Thank you all for coming and joining us, especially at this earlier evening hour. Thank you. We'll start by going through the formality of reading the warrant. It posted annual town meeting warrant, May 9th, 2022, Holliston High School, Town of Holliston. To the Constable of the Town of Holliston, greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth, you're hereby required to notify and warn the inhabitants of the Town of Holliston who are qualified to vote in town affairs to meet in Holliston High School auditorium on Monday, May 9th, 2022. We'll deal with another night if necessary at 7 p.m. to act on the following articles, and the articles are posted. The return of the warrant is such that it was signed by the Board of Selectmen on the 21st day of April 2022, and I have the return of the warrant indicating that on the 21st day of April 2022, posted true copies attested of the within warrant were posted in or within Town Hall as directed by Barry Sims Constable, a true record attested by our distinguished Town Clerk Elizabeth Greendale. So the meeting will come to order. Before we start, I'd like to ask you to join me in a moment of silence in recognition of the passing of Ray Maloney. Those of you who have been in town for some time understand that Ray was a firefighter for a number of years and then served as our fire chief with distinction for a couple of years, and he passed recently. So let's have a moment of silence honoring Ray for his contributions to our safety. Thank you. We'll start this evening with the standard article prior to Article 1, in which I move that the following non-residents and non-voting town officials and consultants to committees be allowed to speak during the course of the annual town meeting. The town warrant has published the names of those 25 individuals who by bylaw are required to have a town vote. So I have a motion to that effect. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? If not, then all those in favor say aye. Aye. So voted. Now, those of you who are able to join us for town meeting, the last annual town meeting, that will recall that we utilized a consent agenda at that time. The consent agenda is a method that we're able to utilize in order to expedite the town meeting, but more importantly, to reserve the time at town meeting for the articles that truly engender debate. And so, with the permission of town meeting, I'm going to propose a consent agenda this evening, under which we move to approve the articles in the consent agenda as those articles are printed in the warrant. The articles that we're going to consider under the consent agenda, folks, is going to be Articles 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, and 26. Now, that doesn't mean that debate will be precluded on those articles. It simply means that traditionally we've considered these articles and there has been no debate because they're basically pro forma articles that are taken and considered by town meeting each year. And rather than read each one, move it, and go through the routine of that, we're going to take them all individually. The articles that are going to be considered for the benefit of those at home who don't have the warrant in front of them but want some idea of how we're conducting the town's business with respect to these articles, they're as follows. Article 11 is to authorize the treasurer collector to sell foreclosed tax title properties. Article 12 is a tax work-off program under Chapter 59, Sections 5K and 5N. Article 13 is compensation for elected officials. Article 14 is pay unpaid bills of prior years. Article 15 is current fiscal year FY22 transfers. Article 17 is to amend the consolidated personnel bylaw. Article 18 is to authorize the Select Board to sell surplus equipment. Article 19 is to authorize to expend Chapter 90 state aid for highways program and Article 20 is to amend the interest rate per annum. Article 21 is to amend the income requirements. Article 22 is veterans tax exemptions, and Article 26 is revolving spending limits. I'll read each article, and if any members of the warrant say hold, if there's 7 members do so, I'll hold and hold that debate. Otherwise, we'll just take these articles together. While each of them would individually require a majority vote, that article that proposes that we pay a bill from a prior year, and this year that amount is very modest, requires a 4/5 vote. So in order to be respectful of the procedural requirement regarding that article, I'm going to call for a 4/5 vote for each of the articles contained within the consent agenda. If the vote is unanimous, then we'll proceed on to the next debatable article, and if it's less than a unanimous vote, because I don't want to trust my hearing to determine it was 4/5 or not, then we'll move and have a hand vote. So is there a second to the motion that I made for the consent agenda? Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the consent agenda as read, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? And that's unanimous, so thank you. We'll now move to Article 1, to hear and act on the report of the Select Board. The motion is to move that the annual report for the town for the 12-month period ending June 30th, 2021 be accepted. Is there a second? The explanation that I can offer to you is that copies of the report are available at the voter check-in tables in the hall and online at townofholliston.us. It'll be available at Town Hall after town meeting. In the back of both the town report and the warrant document, you'll find a citizens volunteer form that can be filled out manually and dropped off at the town clerk's office and will be entered into the new volunteer database. Additionally, a volunteer database form is now available online. You'll also find a reminder in the back of the warrant document to form update contact information on the town's Blackboard notification system. With that, I'll call on the chair of the Select Board to give us a short presentation to town meeting. Thank you. Ms. Hine?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. I'm going to start actually with a few words from Ben Sparrow, who is the Vice Chair of the Select Board. He's noticeably absent from the table and from this evening's debate and discussion. So again, these are a few words shared to you all from Ben Sparrow, and I'll take the liberty of reading it for him. I wish I could be there today, but COVID has hit my house. This tonight is democracy in action, and it is wonderful to see everyone participating. Thank you for coming, and we could all wave to Ben. We know he's watching from home. Thank you to those who put in so much effort to make this event happen. It may be routine, but there is a lot that goes into a town meeting. Special thanks to the town administrator and my colleagues on the Select Board. It is an honor to serve with John and Tina, and I learn from them every week. And John and I would both echo those same remarks right back to Ben. With that said, we're going to go ahead and start the report for this evening. So I'd like to start by thanking several individuals who have been instrumental in the good news, project updates, and positive planning efforts that I'm about to share with you this evening. Travis Ahern and the staff in the town administrator's office. Whoops. There we go. Travis Ahern and the staff in the town administrator's office have done an impressive job preparing a warrant that addresses and advances key priorities for the town of Holliston. Thank you to Travis, to Kathleen, to Donna, and to Peg. Senator Karen Spilka and former Representative Carolyn Dykema have been true partners for Holliston, and you will see their work reflected throughout my update this evening. Town Clerk Liz Greendale, Fire Chief Cassidy, Chris Mayo, and other staff are behind-the-scenes heroes who make tonight possible. Members of the Finance Committee, the School Committee, the Planning Board, and others have spent countless hours of their volunteer time to advise, deliberate, and vote on key decisions within the warrant. Holliston is a good town with very good people working out for the benefit of all of us. Tonight, you're going to hear the words funding, projects, and staff rather a lot. Of course, this being Maytown meeting, when we come together to conduct the business of the town, it is somewhat expected. However, it is also because the town is growing and strengthening with this focus on funding, projects, and staff. Tonight's warrant highlights the good work of the past year and asks for your support of ongoing efforts to bring positive change to Holliston. But first, let's start with some numbers. Holliston residents spoke up when the 2020 federal census arrived in our mailboxes. There was a near 100% response rate to the census, making the final report a true indication of population change and growth. We saw the biggest growth in our population in a 10-year period since 1980. Our population currently stands at, I got to get it right here, 14,996, or to quote Chief Cassidy, so close to 15,000. 75% of this population are over the age of 18. And again, it's the biggest population change we've seen in 10 years, and we are growing in diversity. Our changing population guides strategic planning for town departments. The Select Board remains open and flexible to hear staff requests from departments in response to growing service needs from the community. This year's budget process brought forward several staffing requests for the board to review, and tonight you will see the highest priority positions presented in the budget in Article 27. I'll share more on these requests in a minute, but it is worth noting that several staffing requests did not advance beyond the department's Level 1 budget request. Looking ahead, the Select Board anticipates seeing these staffing requests again. Along with a growing and changing population comes a real need for the Executive Board to seek input from department heads and consultants to identify where and how our town services must adapt. We have done this by investigating both our fire EMS service model and our fire and police dispatch model. And in the months ahead, the Select Board will hold public forums to present an analysis of these models and hear community feedback on proposed optimization of the models. Fire, EMS, and police provide essential, critical public safety services, and any changes to these models must incorporate the growing and changing needs of our community as shared by those who receive the services. In the past 3 years, Town Meeting has approved feasibility studies of our aging infrastructure, and those reports have been accepted by the Select Board, paving the way for real change in the delivery of our water supply, the safety and efficiency of our DPW facility, and the ability of residents of all ages to safely access their community on foot or bike. As noted, I'm going to pass on that. The Select Board has supported infrastructure planning in multiple ways, through coordinated efforts and by identifying all possible funding sources to include taxpayer revenue, state and federal grant programs, state agencies, and legislative earmarks. To date, we have coordinated with Mass DOT, the Department of Transportation. We have coordinated through our state representatives for American Rescue Plan funds and others. The benefit of having reports in hand is that when funding opportunities arise, the town is prepared to move quickly to present a plan. This includes returning to town meeting in the fall and beyond with requests for sidewalk projects, water main replacement projects, and a new DPW facility. As you will see in a minute, an excellent example of this level of proactive planning to date is the $650,000 of federal stimulus money that flowed to Holliston in the past few months. The work to identify funding is constant and ongoing. The list you see here represents a good sample of the number of grant programs that Town Hall staff and others are seeking for hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal and state funding. Of this list, I am most excited about the Safe Streets for All grant program, which will bring federal infrastructure money to Holliston. We have made progress for some road users to date, but this federal money brings real safety improvements for all road users. When Holliston received the nearly $4.5 million from the American Rescue Plan, the Select Board quickly determined the focus that we intended to keep on assisting residents and businesses recovering from the pandemic and to strengthen against future challenges. Under advisement from Chief Cassidy and Travis Ahern, the board created a working group of 6 staff and elected officials to proactively target the money for areas with the greatest impact. With the structure and a vetting process in place, the Select Board has approved hundreds of thousands of dollars in requests that benefit our businesses, our schools, our beloved library, rail trail, and outdoor spaces, as well as our most vulnerable residents. An interim reporting of all American Rescue Plan spending decisions by the board is available on the town website, and any organization or community group can submit a funding request for consideration. The Select Board has known all along that the state would be providing additional American Rescue Plan funding, and through our relationships and communication with Senator Spilka and former Representative Dykema, we have made our needs known during this time of recovery from the pandemic. As a result, Holliston is receiving significant funds from the state's $8.7 billion stimulus money, a little bit more than what we got. And we are using those dollars to directly and immediately advance projects that benefit businesses and residents in Holliston. This past year has not only been about stimulus money. The Select Board has had modest success in bringing new revenue to the town. We frequently deliberate on forming partnerships with businesses in the cannabis industry that balance strong business models and experience with a good fit for the community. The Select Board is negotiating host community agreements with a cannabis manufacturer and a cannabis cultivator currently. From impact fees established within these host community agreements, the town receives significant revenue. Other economic activity has included license relief to restaurants struggling during the multiple lockdowns of the pandemic, and raising revenue for rail trail maintenance through commercial licenses for allowable use by businesses abutting the trail. As mentioned, the town is focused on projects that bring real quality of life improvements and opportunities for economic growth in Holliston. Some of the work was previously approved by town meeting, like the 9 Green Street demolition and construction project, the Town Hall septic project, which now is open, Upper Town Hall that is, for rentals, so glad to see that one completed, and the Blair Square project, which will be presented again to you in Article 32 tonight. Other projects being studied will return to future town meeting for approval and funding, like the feasibility of a downtown sewer district, a new DPW facility, and the repair or removal of Houghton and Factory Pond dams. One standout on the list is the major Massachusetts Department of Transportation project to rehabilitate road surface and improve sidewalks and crosswalks along Washington from Pine Street to the Milford line. Having a state agency like DOT come into Holliston, for the first project of this size in over 15 years is no small feat. We anticipate that the work will begin this summer, and the Select Board, through the town administrator, will keep residents informed of this very large project. Again, this is an excellent example of having needs identified. Through the previous Complete Streets and Stantec sidewalk reports, the Select Board has been able to proactively seek a DOT commitment to the work on these state-owned roads. The new water treatment facility on Central Street will come online this summer. The treatment facility, combined with the project proposed in Article 31 to replace water mains and provide bidirectional flow, shows significant and meaningful progress in improving water service to ratepayers, residents, and businesses. Switching attention now to the warrant in hand, I'd like to draw your focus to pages 46 through 45 in the document you were provided upon entering tonight. Through the leadership of our town administrator, you will see a new view of the budget development process. Town meeting voters can see the town department requests, which up on the screen here and in your packet are the level 1 budget, the first to be recommended, to be presented. Following the level 1 is the level 2 budget, which includes the town administrator's recommendations, then the Select Board recommendations, which are the level 3 budgets listed, and then the Finance Committee's recommendation, which is the final or level 4 budget that you are seeing in Article 27 tonight. Each level follows an evolution of the development process, changing as new information is presented and understood through liaison networks, community input, and always updating financial analysis. The Select Board recommended budget reflects the approved budgets of our board and the other elected boards overseeing budgets like the schools, parks, and library. In the example highlighted here, you'll see the police budget line in 01210 shows a difference of $86,405 between the Select Board and Finance Committee recommendations on the right of the slide. This difference represents the position of a 26th police officer. With this new look to the warrant, town meeting is provided the chance to query the decisions made for the omnibus budget. And the ultimate decision on the fiscal year 2023 omnibus budget is left to a fully informed town meeting voter. In addition to the 26th police officer, the Select Board budget recommended a request for a grounds division. Allow me to explain why it is that the board views both of these as a priority for town meeting to weigh and consider tonight. People move to Holliston because it is a positive, healthy community. People don't leave healthy communities, they stay. Our Holliston Police Department is committed to positive community policing, and to do this work for a growing population, additional staffing has been requested. The Police Department's 5-year strategic plan informed the request, as well as being responsive to day-to-day operations and optimizing an opportunity with this year's Police Academy candidates graduating in late summer. Those of you who follow the Select Board meetings are aware that the request for the 26th has been raised 3 years in a row. This year, Chief Stone shared several key factors that raised the request to a priority level, and he is here tonight to answer questions you might have before you vote. I stand here before you tonight prepared to amend Article 27's motion to include the 26th police officer. The need is only growing, and to miss the opportunity in this budget is to kick the community's needs down the road. The proposed grounds division is a significant multi-board initiative that offers a meaningful commitment of new personnel and reorganization of duties from parks to public works. The alignment of new resources within a new division capable of sustained maintenance efforts will provide much needed improvements to our parks and fields, including those at the schools. Switching focus back to other highlights within the warrant and moving a little more quickly now, we've already approved the consent agenda, so yay. We're looking at 11 o'clock as maybe doable this evening to get through the 41 articles. Of particular interest, I would like to highlight the following. Articles 3 through 5, which when combined create a new stabilization fund and direct cannabis revenue to that fund for future uses like drug diversion, drug prevention, and drug awareness programs. Creating a new stabilization fund through all 3 of those articles, 3, 4, and 5, does just that. Making the new revenue available to Youth and Family Services, the Council on Aging, and Fire and Police Departments, as well as the schools, to continue their combined mission of addressing substance abuse in Holliston. Articles 6 through 8 continue the focus on the cannabis industry by asking voters to revisit decisions about retail sales in Holliston, specifically as related to delivery and courier businesses. Article 24 is added to the standard Board of Assessors warrant articles and seeks a new means-tested property tax exemption for qualifying low-income Holliston seniors. Getting a little bit of whiplash here. Article 27 is the standard May warrant article requesting funds to maintain town-owned equipment and buildings. There are requests to maintain a safe and supported learning environment in the Holliston Public Schools, and these items were fully vetted by the Capital Subcommittee, which is chaired by Vin Murphy of the Finance Committee. Before I close, I would like to acknowledge the hiring of new staff members and recognize the staff and volunteers who are leaving us, as well as make a request for new faces. Again, being responsive to the growing and changing needs of municipal government, the town administrator restructured several departments to develop the positions of assistant town administrator, benefit specialist, and deputy director of the DPW. They've all joined us this past year. With our building inspector, Travis Ahern creatively found a solution for the growing demand for building permits by using the revolving fund for a temporary assistant building inspector position. Farewells. These are hard. 2022 is the last year that Holliston will benefit from the dedication, passion, and knowledge of Kathy Pierce, who served as the town's principal assessor for over 20 years. We wish her good luck in her retirement. We are also saying goodbye to Leslie McDonald, our library director, whose good humor, creativity, and skill as a manager for 20-plus years has built the library into one of the most vibrant and beloved institutions in our town. Farewell, Leslie, we will miss you. The last farewell is to an individual known and admired by many people in this room for his long-standing and unwavering dedication to the boards and committees on which he has served for over 30 years in Holliston. Peter Barbieri is stepping down after 30-plus years of volunteer service in the town. Thank you to each one of you for your dedicated service to the town of Holliston. And finally, to the rest of you here in the room and watching online, you're here to take part in this very special form of local government, and perhaps you can take your love of Holliston one step further and volunteer to serve on one of our 30-plus boards and committees. Thank you for your time tonight, and enjoy the meeting.
Thank you. Could I have a second to the motion to accept the report of the Board of Selectmen? Any further discussion? If not, then all those in favor say aye. So voted. Article 2, to hear and act on the report of the Finance Committee. The motion is that the annual report of the Finance Committee be received. Is there a second? The Chair of the FinCom will give us a presentation with respect to the town's financial condition. Mr. Shader?
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Make sure I'm on sync here. Okay. Thank you to everybody. Sounds like I'm a little loud here. So, as we know, pandemic's been a challenge for us financially. So let's start talking about what that means for FY23. Make sure I get the right direction here. There we go. Okay. Just as a reminder, as Ms. Hine pointed out, we follow a methodology every year where the budgets go through an entire review process. We start by looking at the revenue projections and the models for where we think the year is going to end up financially. We then prepare budget guidance. The town administrator distributes that to all boards and committees. They create their budgets, and along with that, a bunch of other supplementary information that the town administrator and the finance committee both use for making budget determinations. We review all the budgets line by line with the TA and the select board input, as Ms. Hine pointed out, and we develop the omnibus recommendation that you see in Article 27. Okay. So where were we for fiscal 23? As always, our guiding principles are to maintain level of services across all departments. So we start at the same point. Stay on our plan and follow our financial policies. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And to the extent that the revenue picture allows it, we look at service improvements or expansions. But the key thing here is that all service expansions and the operating budget, which is what we're talking about in Article 27, must be sustainable, because when you add something to the operating budget, it has to be funded on an annual basis. So where did that put us for revenue this year? Well, if you look at where the numbers came out, net state aid was up about 2.4% from FY22, and there's a reason why it was ticked up a little higher this year that I'll get to a little later. This is based on guidance from our legislative contingent. Obviously, we don't get the final numbers till around July usually, so we're always passing a budget in Article 27 that isn't quite final. Our 5-year trend has only been just under 0.6% per year. And that's important because what that says is that each year, the state is shifting more and more of the revenue burden to the town. Our local receipts, we modeled, is up 4% from the fiscal 22 model. That just reflects a few adjustments based on economic activity. The total tax levy limit is up about 3.8%. And I wanted to point out that that's the limit. When we talk about the budget and when we talk about the bottom line, it's starting from a point where we work at the limit. And that's usually because we need all the dollars to get to be available for the various things we have to fund. When we go beyond that, then you have to talk about overrides and things like that. But the budget is always structured around this maximum levy limit. This year we got a very, very slight, about $11,000 benefit from debt retirement. But when you add it all together, we started the year with about $2.9 million of additional revenue compared to where we were in fiscal 22. So, how did we use this money? The primary use was as follows: $1.75 million, about 4.7% increase for the school department. That's $159,000 below their original request, and I'll talk more about that shortly as well. We had the typical benefits cost increases. We're actually a little lower than usual this year, only 4.7%. We used about $179,000 to support the initiative that the select board had requested for the DPW grounds division. We increased the police department budget 5.4% by about $172,000, and that was to cover not new services, but a new contract that was reached during the year. And then there was about a 2% COLA and some other small adjustments made compensation-wide throughout the town for the employees. All of this is reflected in Article 27, and it's a $70 million budget. and it requires us taxing at $4,340 below the levy limit. So in a typical year, we like to leave more than that to cover uncertainty and unforeseen things that may come up between now and finalization of the budget. But in order to meet as many of the needs as we could this year, we kind of stretched it a little more than we usually do. So let's talk about service expansions. When we reviewed all the budgets, several departments asked for additional funding for new services. The schools asked for increased mental health support. The Select Board, as was pointed out, asked for the DPW Grounds Division and the 26th Police Officer. I should point out that the Grounds Division was a result of joint work between the Select Board, the School Committee, the Parks Department, and the FinCom from the point of view of giving financial advice. The assessors also asked for additional staffing. They gave two options that they were considering. One was adding a new employee, and the other was increasing their professional services to do contracted services. And the building inspector wanted an additional inspector to support the increased activity that they've been seeing over recent years. Okay. Most of these expansions are in the budget. The schools met their request by sharpening their pencils, and I want to give them a shout out and kudos because we gave them a number and said this is pretty much all we're going to be able to afford. However, we understand the need and we will work with you to try to meet that need and the number we gave you. And they sharpened their pencils, went to work, and are confident that with the number that they have now voted their recommendation to align with ours, their request to align with ours, that they can achieve what they wanted to achieve at a lower cost. The Grounds Division got funded with additional revenue and what I will call a kickstart from the Parks Revolving Fund. The building inspector also, we've met that position by kickstarting that from the Building Department Revolving Fund. The assessor's budget was adjusted to provide additional contract services, but because of the funding constraints, as evidenced by that $4,000 on the bottom line, that prevented the addition of the new staff to the assessors and the police departments. Now, when I say kickstarting, the reason I mention that is because these are revenue-generating activities. The building department, obviously, by having another inspector, will be able to process permits faster, which will result in faster time to revenue, hopefully, for new projects. The Grounds Division, even though it may not seem obvious, one of the reasons we've been unable to realize revenue for our fields and our parks in town is because we don't have the staff to turn them around quickly enough to prepare them for rentals. With the new Grounds Division, the hope is that we will have staffing that can keep the fields in good condition, have them turned around quickly so that we can rent them out to the various sports leagues and recognize additional revenue from that. Obviously, both those cases, the revenue doesn't follow immediately. You've got to make the investment first. So that's why I mean kickstarting. We're using revolving funds to do this, which is not what we would do ordinarily, with the anticipation that there will be additional revenue generated that will allow us to move those into the operating budget permanently next year. Okay. Now, one of the things I want to talk about was this distinction between operating budgets and the capital budget, because you hear me stand up here in October and I say, wow, you know, we've got a lot of capital money and we can spend it, and things are looking okay. That's because capital is completely different from operations. Operating budgets are comprised of primarily recurring expenses, salaries, benefits, things like that. Therefore, they must be funded from a recurring revenue stream, namely the tax base or some other recurring revenue source. Adding to the operating budget is essentially permanently increasing the operating budget. So you don't need to fund it this year, you need to fund it this year and next year and the year after that. Capital expenses, on the other hand, are more one-time in nature. When the town buys a fire truck, we own the fire truck. The cost for the maintenance of that fire truck goes into the operating budget because we must maintain it every year. But because we had a fire truck we were replacing, we already had maintenance money in the budget for that. So when you look at this breakdown, you can fund certain capital purchases from one-time revenue sources if you have to, because the impact from the purchase is only for 1 year. When we sat down with the town administrator and started looking at the 5-year capital plan, it was clear that our ongoing capital needs would be close to $3 million a year. I can tell you from my experience on the committee, this was recognized 10, 15 years ago, that we needed to have at least probably $3 million a year put aside for capital on an annual basis. We started a long time ago, as you all know, to increase our set aside for that as a way to build towards that number to get to where we need to be. Okay? So it's important that we keep moving on that path. If we underfund capital to fund operating expenses, that's unsustainable and it's bad practice. Because what it means is that we're putting off the capital purchases we need to fund ongoing expenses that aren't going to go away and allow us to buy those things later. So, as an overall trend, where are we? Well, if you look at what I show here, net state aid has been about 1.95% up year over year. As I said earlier, the state has been consistently shifting the burden to us. Chapter 70 has been averaging about 2.1% per year, and I have a little asterisk there because it jumps a little deceptively this year, and that's because we implemented full-day kindergarten in town, tuition-free full-day kindergarten. Because we did that, the state increased our Chapter 70 aid. So we saw a one-time bump this year for that, and in many respects, one of the only reasons we were able to get to that $4,300 on the bottom line was because we got that bump in Chapter 70 aid. But over the last 10 years, pension and benefits, always big expense, which is one reason why we're trying to get ahead of funding those, 6.34% per year. General government, 5.02%. Public safety has been getting about 4.83%. The school department has only been averaging about 3.15%, but of course, given their size, they're the highest dollar by far. Our OPEB contribution, as you know, was never part of the budget, was funded from other recurring sources, was a one-time benefit to the town, and has never been raised, and that's why it hasn't grown at all over the last 10 years. But our debt service, thanks to repayment of our debt, is down on average 20% per year, and we're now probably at the lowest debt level we've had in 20 years. I don't know that for a fact, but we're close. Now, where does this get us? Well, as you've heard, and this is something the town should be very proud of, we have our newest and first ever AAA rating. And as you see the projection here. Right? And you can see the progression here as the financial plans that we put in place have borne fruit and have gotten us to this point. As it was pointed out earlier, we'll save about $115,000 on the water treatment plant because of this. And you also heard Ms. Hine talk about large capital projects that the Select Board is currently considering. That will save significantly more on potentially future large borrowings. For example, the schools are seeking an SOI. Should that produce a new high school, that will dwarf the $8 million for the water treatment plant. That'll be, tens of millions of dollars at least. So the potential savings on that could be much more significant. But I wanted to talk to you about why we got that rating, because S&P issues a rating report where they basically explain their rationale for giving you that rating. And here I just put a few lines to show you why what we're doing has been successful. They said very strong financial management. I put financial in there because they were talking about the numbers, with formalized policies that are adhered to. Okay. Make sure I'm still in sync here. Okay. They said we have a large pension and OPEB obligations that the town continues to proactively manage. Over the past 5 years, the town's OPEB liability funded ratio continues to increase, which we believe is a significant credit positive and demonstrates the town's willingness to address its liabilities. Given Holliston's history of balanced operating and total governmental funds results, along with stable projections for fiscal 22, we expect continued strong budgetary performance. In short, S&P has made their position clear with our rating that they believe in the strategy that we have followed. So, I'm not going to go through all these individually, but because we covered some of this already, but Articles 3 through 5 will segregate the cannabis money into a separate fund, various articles to do it, but that's essentially what it's doing. Article 16 adjusts job classifications, and I would refer you to the warrant. There's a comment there from the town administrator that explains the changes. They're not really significant changes, but they're changes that need to be made. Article 23 increases the limit for personal property tax exemption. It's just a few thousand, and they're just bumping it up a little bit. And Article 24, I know the assessors will talk about this, but I wanted to just give you a little bit of background to help out understanding it. It basically provides for a mean-tested property tax exemption for senior citizens. And one of the questions I always get asked whenever anybody sees exemptions or things like that is, what does that do to our revenue? And the answer to that is it doesn't do anything. And that's because when we pass these exemptions, the amount that is exempted is essentially spread out amongst all the other taxpayers. Now, it's a very, very small amount to all the other taxpayers, but the net result to the budget is it doesn't have a revenue impact. Article 25 allows the Select Board to negotiate a pilot for the solar farm at 39 Marshall Street. That's important because solar farms get certain special tax treatment, and it's usually more financially advantageous to the town to have a pilot rather than follow just strictly what they're allowed to pay. There we go. Okay. Article 27, which is the omnibus budget. I just talked about how we came up with our recommendations. I will point out that it meets all financial policy requirements. We have a set of policies that S&P has been behind, and we are sticking to them in this recommendation. In Article 28, the Capital Expenditure Fund, consistent with the Finance Committee's budget, we are recommending $1.875 million to be put into that Capital Expenditure Fund. As I pointed out, it really should be closer to $3 million. It's taken us a decade plus to get to 1.875. We still have a ways to go. Article 29 shows you why we need the money, because in this town meeting alone, we're looking at $1 million worth of capital. Some of it is funded from water, so it's not entirely coming out of the Capital Expenditure Fund. But you can see that the fall is typically where we do most of our capital spending, and we're spending already $1 million in May. Article 30 is very interesting. This is to convert our streetlights to LEDs. Now, obviously, there's an environmental benefit to doing that, but this all came about because we happen to be the recipients of a favorable glitch for many years. And it benefited us financially for many, many years, where we were being charged the rate, the electric rate, by the electric company that is usually provided to towns that own their own streetlights, except we didn't own them. The rate, if you don't own them, is 3 times higher. So as they say, if anybody saw the movie Office Space, they fixed the glitch. And when they did that, our bill tripled. And at that level, it made more sense to buy the lights than to continue paying the rates we were going to be forced to pay going forward. That also allows the town to improve service in a sense, because you have this perverse incentive when you don't own the lights that the electric company has no incentive to give you energy efficient lights when you're paying them for the electricity to turn the lights on. Now that we own the lights, we can make invest a little money, and we'll get a savings within 2 to 4 years. It'll pay for itself. So these lights will obviously last well longer than 2 to 4 years. So this, to me, is a perfect opportunity of no-brainer. We should do this conversion, reduce our operating costs. There's also a possibility we can get additional grant funding that will offset the amount we're going to approve tonight. So the amount we approve tonight is the full amount. But if we get grant funding, then the ROI can be within 2 years. It'll be a financial win for the town. Make sure I'm still in sync. Okay. CPC, I'll let the CPC talk about that because they have the Blair Square project and some other things they want to talk about. Article 34 is a small amount of money to start planning for Holliston's 300th in 2024. And believe it or not, I haven't been here since 1724, but hopefully I'll be here in 2024 to celebrate with the rest of the town. 35 is our typical boilerplate stabilization fund article. The only reason this could not be included in the consent agenda is because it requires indefinite postponement, because we have nothing to do at this town meeting for the stabilization fund. And finally, just for clarification, if you look at your warrant, you'll see that the Finance Committee had not made a recommendation on Article 40. We promised to make one at town meeting. Well, I'm making it for you. We voted prior to this meeting to recommend favorable action. The reason we had deferred it was because we had seen this road acceptance before, and we were kind of wondering why we were seeing it again and whether there was a financial reason why we were seeing it again. But we've clarified that it was just an expiration of a deadline, and there's no change, so there's no financial impact. Okay. So where do we go from here? Okay. This is the slide you should pay the most attention to. I talked about how we're trying to meet the needs of the town by being fairly aggressive this year in getting some of these projects moving. So when you look at the budget, it includes about $120,000 of what I would call one-time money that has to be planned for in 2024. Okay? These are the Kickstart funds. We can't, on an ongoing basis, be pulling large amounts out of revolving funds to fund some of these positions. because there's no, and of course, because they are going to generate revenue, we'll see that eventually, but there's no guarantee that that'll offset the costs in fiscal '24. In addition to that, as you heard earlier, we used ARPA funds to kickstart full-day kindergarten at the schools. All of us have been in favor of doing something like that for a long time, and ARPA gave the town the opportunity to get that going. But what that means is that starting in fiscal '25, the town is going to have to absorb about $650,000 in full-day kindergarten costs. Whether that's through the school budget, through any other means, it will be through the school budget, but how we get from here to there may not be through the school budget. But in any case, we're starting out looking forward with known issues we're going to have to address. And of course, as everybody knows, inflation, because of all of this, inflation is rising, and that's pushing us against the limits of Prop 2.5. Proposition 2.5 serves us very well when inflation is 2%, and that 2.5% gives you a little bit of margin every year. When inflation is 6, 7, 8, 9%, Prop 2.5, the town is effectively losing buying power on an annual basis. And it means we have to do more to get the budget, to keep the budget under control. So, in summary, this is not my real summary, but every year when I get up here, I always forget to show this. So this year I stuck it ahead of my real summary so that I'd remember to say this. We meet every Tuesday, weekly during the budget season. We have virtual meetings. Because of the pandemic, we've been meeting virtually. All our meetings are broadcast on HCAT. They're also recorded. You can go watch them at on the town's website anytime you want. We have our finance section on the town's website. All the budgets we consider and review before they get into the omnibus are posted prior to presentation to us. And we have, of course, our budget meetings are all entirely public, as are all our deliberations on the budget. So you're welcome to join us anytime. And there's our email address for anybody who wants to send us hate mail after this is all over. Okay. But where are we financially? We've weathered the worst of the pandemic. However, we've got some concerns going forward. The pandemic spending is causing a hangover that the town will probably be dealing with for several years. And while it's great, and I'm all for grant funds and all these ARPA funds and everything that are coming to the town, nothing is ever free. When the government showers us with a lot of free money now, we're going to end up paying for it later. Okay? So as I said, we're seeing that already in higher inflation and tighter labor markets. And of course, the end of the free money period shifts the burden to the operating budget to absorb the expansions that occurred with the free money. And of course, we all know that there are mental health needs, and there's going to be increasing spending on mental health needs probably going forward. But the one thing I will say is that town meeting support for good financial practice continues to benefit us. We're going to be challenged tonight, as you already heard, on the 26th police officer. It was not because the Finance Committee felt that the officer wasn't justified or that we disagreed with the assessment that this is something we want to consider. But when looking at the entirety of the budget, it was very clear that this is not the year to do that, especially knowing that we have costs that are already being pushed on to FY24. So, we've worked hard to build a solid financial foundation for today and for years to come. There will be future challenges, I'm sure, but with town meeting support of good financial practices, we will be well positioned to successfully address them. Thank you for letting me speak to you tonight.
Thank you. That motion had been made and seconded. Any further discussion with respect to the FinCom report? Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion. All those in favor of accepting the report say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Now we'll move to Article 3. Articles 3 through 10 deal individually with the topic of marijuana and various aspects of the town's relationship with that product. I'm going to ask Kate Federoff, Town Council, who has expertise in that particular area of the law, to just give us a brief overview of these Articles 3 through 10, and then we'll move to consider them. Thank you. Kate, please.
Thank you so much for having me. I will be very, very brief. I just want to group Articles 3 through 5 together, and you heard Tina and Ken speak about this earlier. These are the financial articles related to cannabis. Specifically, the first article, Article 3, creates a stabilization fund where all funds will be deposited into that stabilization account, okay? The second article, so Article 4, is simply the acceptance of a statute which allows the dedication of certain funds. So without town meeting having to react each and every year, those funds, when you accept that statute, it can be any certain types of funds, it's the mechanism so that the stabilization account will be funded. Then the third article, which is Article 5, is the actual dedication, where you say 100% of that cannabis money, whether it be from taxation or from community impact fees, get funded automatically into the stabilization account. So in order for that to happen, so for you to segregate those funds so you can see what money's coming in and what money is going out in a really transparent way, all three articles will have to be accepted. Then, if you look at the balance of the articles, those relate to essentially use. So the first article, which is Article 6, it's a general bylaw, so majority vote, and that just creates this, we already have a licensure structure for all of our other marijuana establishments, but it adds to that license structure delivery. So that's delivery operations that are cited within the town, operating out of the town of Holliston. Okay, and it creates this annual licensure whereby the Board of Selectmen, or excuse me, the Select Board can call that entity in if something's going wrong, have that entity explain what's going on, and if nothing's going on, just annually license them, no problem. Article 7, so the second article of that group, is a zoning bylaw, and that allows the citing of delivery marijuana delivery entities in the town of Holliston. So there are two types of delivery operations. One is a courier, so that's your grub hub of cannabis, where the entity picks up from a marijuana retailer located somewhere outside of Holliston, because we don't allow retail in Holliston, and delivers to some resident, and it could be anywhere in the state, okay? But they pick up from a retailer and deliver to the consumer, and they only charge the delivery fee. The next type is a delivery operator, and they have a little bit more of a robust operation in the town. Not only do they deliver the goods, but they can bring it back to their own facility and relabel it as their own. So they can call it blue marijuana when they pick it up from the cultivator or manufacturer or retailer, call it blue marijuana, and they bring it back to their facility and they call it red marijuana, and they deliver it then to the consumer and sell it to the consumer as a retail sales at their residence, okay? And that type of establishment, DLS, so the Department of Local Services, an arm of the Department of Revenue, has said, is subject to the local sales tax, because they're actually taking ownership of, possession of the marijuana and reselling it on the retail market. So that's going to be subject to a 3% sales tax, and of course, any community impact fees that are negotiated by the Select Board. And again, our zoning bylaw requires a special permit process, so that's essentially oversight by the special permit granting authority to ensure that there's proper security and the layout is consistent with the community, et cetera, et cetera. The final grouping of the town's articles that are being proposed is a notification to the CCC that delivery can be allowed within its borders from facilities, say, outside. Because right now, because there's a ban on marijuana retail in the town of Holliston, no resident can receive marijuana at their own home from entities outside of the town. And this would allow us to opt in as residents of the town and say, we want to receive deliveries in our home, okay? And this would only be necessary if the zoning bylaw failed. So if marijuana delivery operations weren't allowed to site in Holliston, then we would still have a ban, but you may say, as residents, I don't know, it's up to you, you may say that even though we don't want entities to site within our borders, we still want our residents to be able to receive marijuana at their homes like an Amazon delivery would be. So just like you receive your dog food, you would be able to receive your cannabis, obviously subject to different security requirements, but you would still be able to do that. Articles 9 and 10 are citizens petitions, and they essentially mirror what's being proposed by the town. The distinction being the zoning bylaw that was being presented as an allowed as of right use, meaning they wouldn't be subject to review by the planning board, wherever those folks are. So they wouldn't be subject to the same type of oversight at the initial development stage, okay? I spoke with the petitioner. He said if the town's marijuana zoning bylaw went through, he's not going to push his bylaw forward, so he'll move to pass over, and David Rabinovitz, who was one of the petitioners, would be moving to pass over that article if the first one is successful. Same thing with the notification to the CCC. So neither of those will be pushed forward if the towns pass. Okay? And if you have any further questions, I'm here to answer them when the time arises.
Great, thank you, Kate. All right, we'll move to consideration of Article 3. The article is for the establishment of a cannabis revenue stabilization fund. It's sponsored by the Board of Selectmen. The article reads as follows: to see if the town will vote to establish a special purpose stabilization fund pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 5B, to reserve for expenditures related to 1, I, meaning acquisition of tangible assets or the undertaking of capital projects which are reasonably related to local impacts related to marijuana establishments, drug diversion, drug prevention, drug awareness. II, drug awareness programs. III, drug awareness and utilization plans. 4, drug diversion and management programs, and 5, drug detection and training programs that take any action relative thereto. The motion is moved to establish a cannabis stabilization fund pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5B. Is there a second? The Finance Committee, I should note, recommended favorable action, 6-0, with Ms. Sobchak absent. I'm going to resist the opportunity presented to me to give a further explanation because Kate is giving you the explanation. Are the topics open for discussion? Anybody wish to be heard? Yes, sir. I might add that this vote will require a 2/3 vote because it involves the creation of a stabilization fund. Just give us your name and address, sir, please. Thank you.
Bruce Wood, 128 Dalton Road. If I'm not mistaken, we've heard these articles before or something very similar. And at that time, FinCom had stated that although their recommendation was for passing the article, that was because there was no financial reason to not pass the article. I'd like to hear from FinCom to say, if we don't pass this article, is there a negative impact to the town? Because in my opinion, limiting where we put this money by an article is limiting the town's ability to move money from one fund to another. There doesn't appear to be a reason to establish this fund.
Yes, Ken, go ahead, please.
Okay. Ken Jada, 676 Fisk. The short answer is we can undo this. Right now, what happens with marijuana money or cannabis money is it goes into the general fund, so it becomes available to spend. There are several different sources of funds. There are the host community agreements. There's heard about the sales tax, things like that. Some of them are variable and not permanent, so they drop off after a little while. And so one of the reasons that we have looked towards this and the select board has looked towards this is because when we put it in the general fund, it looks like we have money. But as I was just saying, if it's not stable money that's going to drop off after a few years, we don't want to build our budget around it and then find out that, oh, we forgot that, the cannabis revenue dropped 50%, and so now we had a problem. So part of that was to say, okay, let's take this variable piece, put it into the stabilization fund to use for those programs so that if it varies, it doesn't impact our operations. If we don't do anything, the money just continues to go into the general fund and can be appropriated anywhere. So.
Further discussion? Yes, Kate?
I also want to draw to your attention that the law restricts already how you can use these funds. So when it gets sent into the general fund, you still have to monitor that money as it goes out because it has to be related to the cannabis industry operating in your town. So this is an easy way to track and be transparent on how and where those funds are being expended, so you can be so you ensure that you're compliant with law. And recently, there have been some challenges in other communities whereby they're saying that they're spending, I don't know, the cannabis money on paper clips or something wholly unrelated to cannabis. And so this also ensures that you're tracking everything in a really careful and transparent way so you are consistent and compliant with law.
Okay, any further discussion? Yes, sir.
I'm David Rabinovitz live at 92 Wingate Road. At the fall town meeting, I was very much opposed to this, and I have an issue with Article 5, but as to this Article 3 and also Article 4, and not that I'm the be-all, end-all, I don't think there's anything wrong with these. All it is establishing a fund, as Kate said, to move the money over. I've got an issue with Article 5 that I'll talk about when we get there, but as the person who was most vocal against this back in the fall, I think that this particular warrant article should pass. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. It requires a 2/3 vote. Well, first we'll trust my judgment on the vote, and then we'll see if it's close. I'll call for a hand count. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed? That clearly passed, then. Article 4, sponsored by the Select Board, to see if the town will vote to accept the 4th paragraph of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 5B, which allows the dedication without further appropriation of all or a percentage of not less than 25% of particular fees, charges, or receipts to a stabilization fund established under the Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 5B, to effective for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2022, or take any action relative thereto. The motion is moved that the town accept the provisions of the 4th paragraph of Chapter 40, Section 5B. Is there a second? The FinCom was recorded favorable action, 6-0 with Ms. Sobchak absent. This requires a simple majority vote. It's open for discussion. Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Article 5, dedication of cannabis receipts without further appropriation, sponsored by the Select Board, to see if the town will vote to dedicate 100% of the local sales tax on the sale or transfer of marijuana or marijuana products by a marijuana retailer operating within the town collected pursuant to Mass General Laws Chapter 64 and Section 3, and 100% of the community impact fees for marijuana establishments operating within the town collected pursuant to Mass General Laws Chapter 94G, Section 3, and applicable host community agreements to the Cannabis Revenue Stabilization Fund established under the Mass General Laws Chapter 40, Section 5B, to be effective for the fiscal year beginning on July 1, 2022, or take any action relative thereto. The motion is as follows. Move that the town dedicate 100% of local sales tax on the sale or transfer of marijuana and 100% of community impact fees assessed on marijuana establishments operating within the town as printed in the warrant. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. The FinCom also recommends favorable action, 6-0 with Ms. Sobchak absent. It's open for discussion. Who wishes to be heard? Mr. Rabinowitz?
David Rabinovitz, 92 Wingate Road. 2 points. One is there are no retailers in town, so there's not going to be any sales tax coming from retailers. But as Kate mentioned, if the other warrant articles are approved that allow marijuana delivery operators, the delivery operator model will collect sales tax regardless of where they deliver in the state. Whatever municipality it is, the sales tax they collect from those deliveries comes back to Holliston. But the article mentions retailers only. I don't know if there's a way to amend it, but it should be amended to say that the sales tax from retailers as well as marijuana delivery operators.
Is there a way yeah, you can make a motion to amend it. Just give us to it in writing, and if there's a second to your motion, we'll proceed with it.
All right, so a motion to amend the second line as it appears in the warrant article. It says by a marijuana retailer to be by a marijuana retailer or a marijuana delivery operator.
All right, if you reduce that to writing, is there a second to Mr. Rabinowitz's motion? Okay. If you reduce that to writing, yep,
Okay.
thank you. All right, the amendment is open to debate. Who wishes to be heard, if anyone? Yeah. I'm sorry, yes, Kate, go right ahead.
So as I read the motion, it says community impact fees and sales tax on marijuana establishments. And if you look at the first part, it's local sales tax on the sale or transfer of marijuana. So it's a little bit more general. I think frankly, I think the amendment is unnecessary. That said, I don't have an objection to it. It perhaps makes it more clear as to what would be dedicated. But I do think it's comprehensive enough to stand on its own.
Did you get the motion in writing, Liz?
He's doing it now.
Okay,
He's ready.
all right. Any further discussion? Okay, as soon as I have Mr. Rabinowitz's motion, we'll proceed to a vote on his amendment. Okay, can you just make sure that's consistent with what he indicated to the town? Thank you, sir. Okay, so the motion is to amend the motion that I had advanced to folks, and by simply adding after marijuana retailer, add or delivery operator. That's the motion. It's been seconded. Discussion is complete. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Okay, the amendment passes. So now we'll move to a vote on the article as amended, which means including the language offered by Mr. Rabinowitz. Any further discussion on the main motion as amended? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion as amended say aye. Aye. And those opposed? So voted. Article 6, sponsored by the Select Board, marijuana delivery general bylaws, to see if the town will vote to amend Article XLV, Section 1 of the general bylaws to add marijuana courier, marijuana delivery operator, marijuana delivery licensee as a use licensed by the Select Board as follows, or take any action relative thereto. Section 1, operation. No person shall operate a craft marijuana cultivator cooperative, marijuana cultivator, marijuana courier, marijuana delivery operator, marijuana delivery licensee, marijuana product manufacturer, and marijuana testing facility as defined by Mass General Laws, Chapter 94G, or any other licensed marijuana operation within the town unless first duly licensed by the Select Board, which license is renewable annually. The motion is moved that the town approve the amendment to Article XLV, Section 1 of the general bylaws as printed in the warrant. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? Yes, sir. Mr. Murphy? Mr. Murphy?
Thank you.
Okay.
Vincent Murphy from 432 Norfolk Street. I just want clarification from Kate regarding these two articles and the delivery, the notification. Because my understanding is you can't deliver in town unless we notify the cannabis control. But I didn't hear what Kate said. I thought Kate said, oh, regardless, we don't have to vote on this if we...
No. So the next three articles are sort of together. Okay. This one is the local licensing authority. So think your liquor licenses, but it's a cannabis license, okay? So annually, they're going to appear before the Select Board and be licensed, okay? The second article, so the next article coming up, is the zoning bylaw, which allows the operation of a delivery entity in the town. And the third is required only if the second one fails, and that's an opt-in. So you can receive deliveries from delivery operations outside of the town. If the zoning bylaw passes, which allows delivery operations, we're automatically allowing delivery in the town, because the CCC says you automatically are allowed to have delivery if you have retailers, or if you allow the citing of delivery, or if you opt in.
So,
understood?
Well, yes, but I just want to clarify that the zoning, by passing that, you're allowing I'm thinking the cultivators in town, which we have a fair number, they can deliver, but they can't deliver unless we say yes to the zoning.
Oh, to be clear, so your existing operations, your cultivators and manufacturers, they would need a separate delivery license. It's not de facto everyone's allowed to deliver, and their HCAs would have to be amended.
Okay.
And third, delivery operators and couriers right now are limited to social equity and economic empowerment candidates who were negatively impacted by the war against drugs. So many of your cultivators wouldn't meet that standard or classification.
So we passed the bylaw that automatically grants them the ability to sell and deliver in town. They being the cultivators, assuming that they get, no? It has to go through marijuana delivery. It has to go through one of the delivery points. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote. This requires a simple majority. All those in favor of the motion as read and seconded, say aye. Those opposed? So voted. Now, Article 7 is the zoning article, sponsored by the Planning Board, to amend the zoning bylaws at sections IE definitions and sections 3G use to add marijuana licensees and to allow the uses within the industrial zoning district by special permit. And the definitions language is sketched out in the not sketched out, is provided for distinctly in the article, identifying the change in definitions and the use chart. The motion is move that the town approve the amendments to the article to amend sections IE definitions and section 3G industrial and outdoor uses of the zoning bylaws as printed in the warrant. Is there a second? Did I hear a second? Yep. Okay, thank you. And in connection with that article, as you know, at least the regular attendees here know, zoning articles require a hearing before the planning board, and by state law requires that I receive for your consideration a copy of their vote either for or against the article. In this particular case, I have a letter dated to me, care of Liz Graindale, referencing Article 7, zoning bylaw amendment to dear Mr. Moderator, with regard to the proposed amendment to the zoning bylaws at section I-E definitions, parens marijuana courier, marijuana delivery licensee, marijuana delivery operator, and marijuana establishment, and parens, and section 3G industrial and outdoor use number 9 of marijuana delivery licensees. I would respectfully report that the planning board held a public hearing as required by Mass General Laws chapter 48 section 5 on April 14th 2022. The members voted 5-0 to recommend support for the proposed article as printed in the warrant. If you have any questions, board members will be present. Sincerely, Karen Apuzzo-Langton, chairwoman. So that recommendation is included for your consideration. Motion made and seconded. It's open for discussion. Does anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. It requires a 2/3 vote because we're proposal is to amend the zoning bylaw. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. I did hear a brief voice in opposition, but I'm satisfied there was a 2/3 vote. Article 8. Marijuana delivery, authorize the select board to notify the CCC, which is the Cannabis Control Commission, of allowance of delivery, sponsored by the planning board. Do I have the to see if the town will vote to allow for the delivery of marijuana or marijuana products to consumers within the town borders, notify the Cannabis Control Commission that delivery of marijuana or marijuana products to consumers is permitted in Holliston under 935 CMR, which is Code of Mass Regulations 500.145 parens 1, and to make all corresponding amendments to the town's general bylaws to reflect such change or take any action relative thereto. The motion is move that the town approve the delivery of marijuana and the marijuana products to residents within its border and authorize the select board to notify the Cannabis Control Commission of same. Is there a second? Second. And as with the prior article,
No, the next one's 36. The next one's 36.
we didn't need a vote on this one?
We don't need a letter.
Okay. Huh? So on this article, I don't need a vote of the planning board? No, okay, excuse me. We don't need a vote of the planning board. Fine, thank you. So we have a vote in second. It's open for debate. Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? So voted. Now, Article 9, Citizens Petition. Article 9, Marijuana Delivery. Notifies CCC of allowance of delivery. And as you folks know, at least the regular attendees know, there's a provision in mass law that allows a specified number of citizens to petition for the inclusion of an article in the warrant. And under rare circumstances, the article is rejected. We may deal with that a little bit later this evening, but for our purposes, we have a citizens petition here today. The town accepts the petition in the format it's delivered to us. The article is sponsored by and it references citizens' petition to see if the town will vote to allow for the delivery of marijuana or marijuana products to consumers within the town borders, notify the Cannabis Control Commission that the delivery of marijuana or marijuana products to consumers is permitted in Holliston under 935 CMR 500.145.1, to make all corresponding amendments to the town's general bylaws to reflect such change or take any action relative thereto. And the motion is the citizen here? Yes, Mr. Benevitz. Do you want to be heard on this?
Sure. Can I make a motion to withdraw the next two?
We take them one at a time, sir. If your motion, want to make a motion to definitely postpone it?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that? Second. Any discussion? If not, then all those in favor of the indefinite postponement of this article say aye. Those opposed? So voted. Article 10, similar citizens petition.
Motion to indefinitely suspend.
Indefinitely postpone?
Indefinitely postpone.
Okay, is there a
That's it.
second? That's all right. You spare me from reading it, and I appreciate that. Is there a second to the gentleman's motion? Any discussion? If not, then all those in favor say aye. Those opposed? So voted. Now, having taken advantage of the consent agenda, you can join me in a delightful way in passing over Articles 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, and we'll move to Article 16, which is not included within the agenda as one which might or might not warrant debate, but wasn't deemed suitable for inclusion in that article. Article 16, to amend the Consolidated Personnel Bylaw, Section 29, Job and Wage Classification Plan, sponsored by the Town Administrator, to see if the town will vote to amend the Consolidated Personnel Bylaw, Section 29, Job and Wage Classification Plan, by reflecting those revisions, deletions, and/or additions to be effective as of July 1, 2022, or take any action relative thereto. Move that the article be approved as presented in the warrant. The FinCom wishes voted in favor, 6-0, with Ms. Sobchak absent. The explanation offered is that the Consolidated Personnel Bylaw article is updated annually and covers the pay scales for all non-union, full-time, part-time, and temporary employees of the town. Specific changes in this article include updating the cost of living adjustment for non-union personnel by 2%, removing the grade 50 scale and replacing impacted positions on the placing impacted positions on the miscellaneous table, and adds a step 8 to grades 100 through 500. Is there a second? Second. And we'll hear from Mr. Ahern, our able town
My
administrator.
apologies for slowing us down. This was just brought to my attention.
No, that's okay.
So if you're looking at page 25 of the document that you all have as you entered, there's a list of intermittent rates for temporary, seasonal, miscellaneous, and per diem positions. We've identified 2 positions that need to be amended. And let me just pull up here from staff who was looking this up for me. The lifeguards, as posted at minimum wage +1, needs to be amended to $18 to $19, and the lifeguard supervisor, which references the $16 amount, should actually be from $18 to $22. We don't see a bottom line impact. If the Finance Committee would like to weigh in, that does impact the Recreation Revolving Fund. And as I'm not a resident, however, Mr. Moderator would like to proceed with a motion to amend, but those are the changes that I will need.
You're going to have to give that to me, Mr. Writing. Same rules apply to the big shots in town.
I'll absolutely write it down for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I apologize.
Is there a second to Mr. And at least I distinguished you as Mr. Ahern this year, not Mr. Sparling, so I've improved my vision, at least, or memory anyway. Yeah, thank you, sir. Is there a second to the town administrator's motion to make those amendments? Second. Mr. Shader, do you want to be heard on the topic?
No, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Any further discussion on the motion to amend? If not, then we'll move to a motion. All those in favor of the motion to amend, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. They'll move to the motion, the main motion as amended by Mr. Ahern's motion. All those in favor of the main motion as amended, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Article 17 was part of the consent agenda, as was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So move to Article 23, sponsored by the Board of Assessors. The article reads as follows: to see if the town will vote to accept Clause 54 of Section 5 of Chapter 59 of the Massachusetts General Laws and authorize the town to establish a minimum fair cash value required for a personal property account to be taxed, and further establish such minimum fair cash value at $5,000 to be effective for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2022 and ending July 30th, 2023, or take any action relative thereto. The suggested the motion, cite that, it's not suggested. The motion is moved to accept Chapter 59, Section 5, Clause 54 as printed in the warrant. Is there a second? Did you hear a second, Liz? Second. Well, thank you. The FinCom recommends favorable action 6-0 with subject absent. The explanation tendered is that the personal property exemption was voted for FY 2007 at $3,000 and has been in place since this time. The Board of Assessors voted on February 15, 2022 to increase the exemption from $3,000 to $5,000. The Board of Assessors was unanimously in favor. Any discussion? This requires a majority vote. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? So voted. Article 54, established by the, recommended by the Board of Assessors. To
25?
strike that?
24?
24?
24, you said 54.
Strike that. Article 24, excuse me, establish means-tested senior citizen property tax exemption, sponsored by the Board of Assessors. To see if the town will petition the Great and General Court to approve an act authorizing the town of Holliston to establish a means-tested senior citizen property tax exemption, or take any action relative thereto. And I apologize for the length, but we have, I'm sure, a number of seniors at home that this might affect. I want to read it for them. The proposed act reads as follows: be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives in General Court assembled, and by the authority of same as follows. With respect to each qualifying parcel of real property classified as Class 1 residential in the town of Holliston, there should be an exemption from the property tax in an amount to be set annually by the Select Board as provided in Section 3. The exemption shall be applied to the domicile of a taxpayer only. For the purpose of this act, parcel shall mean a unit of real property as defined by the Board of Assessors under the deed for the property, and shall include a condominium unit. The exemption provided for in this section shall be in addition to any other exemptions allowed pursuant to the general laws. The Board of Assessors for the town of Holliston may deny an application for exemption if the board finds that the applicant has excessive assets that place the applicant outside of the intended recipients of the senior exemption established pursuant to this act. Real property shall qualify for the exemption pursuant to Section 1 if the following criteria are met. 1, the qualifying real property is owned and occupied by a person whose prior year income would make the person eligible for the circuit breaker income tax credit pursuant to Section K of Section 6 of Chapter 62 of the General Laws. The qualifying real property is owned by a single applicant who is age 65 or older at the close of the previous year, or jointly by persons whose age is 60 years or older, provided that not less than one joint owner is age 65 or older at the close of the previous year. The qualifying real property is owned and occupied by the applicant or joint applicants as their domicile. The applicant or at least one of the joint applicants has been domiciled in an older home in the town of Holliston for not less than 10 consecutive years prior to filing an application for the exemption. The maximum assessed value of the domicile is not greater than the year's maximum assessed value for qualification for the circuit breaker income tax pursuant to subsection K of Section 6 of Chapter 62 of the General Laws as adjusted annually by the Department of Revenue. And 6, the Board of Assessors has approved the application for the exemption. Section 3, the Select Board for the Town of Holliston shall annually set the exemption amount provided for in Section 1, provided, however, that the amount of the exemption should not be less than 50% and not more than 200% of the amount of the circuit breaker income tax credit pursuant to subsection K of Section 6 of Chapter 62 of the general laws for which the applicant qualified in the previous year. The total amount exempted by the act shall be allocated proportionally within the tax levy on all residential taxpayers. A person who seeks to qualify for the exemption pursuant to Section 1 shall, before the deadline established by the Board of Assessors of the Town of Holliston, file an application on a form adopted by the Board of Assessors with the supporting documentation of the applicant's income and assets as described in the application. The application shall be filed each year for the applicant, shall be filed each year for which the applicant seeks the exemption. No exemption shall be granted pursuant to this act until the Department of Revenue certifies a residential tax rate for the applicable year where the total exemption amount is raised by the burden shift within the residential tax levy. The exemption provided from this act shall expire 3 years after the effective date of this act, provided, however, that the Town of Holliston may reauthorize the exemption for additional 3-year intervals by vote of the legislative body of the town. The act shall take place upon its passage. The motion is moved that the town petition the Great and General Court to approve an act authorizing the town to establish a means-tested senior citizen property tax exemption as presented in the warrant, and to authorize the Select Board to accept any non-substantive amendments as may be directed by the Great and General Court. Is there a second? The FinCom recommended favorable action 6-0 with this subject absent. Any discussion? Seeing none, this requires a majority vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Article 25, solar pilot. That's payment in lieu of taxes on 39 Marshall Street, sponsored by the Board of Assessors. To see if the town, in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 59, Section 38H, authorized the Select Board and the Board of Assessors to negotiate and enter into a tax agreement for the payment of personal property taxes on the photovoltaic facility being constructed at 39 Marshall Street, or take any action relative thereto. The motion is move that the town authorize the Select Board and Board of Assessors to negotiate and enter into a tax agreement for the payment of personal property taxes for 39 Marshall Street pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 38H. Is there a second? The FinCom recommended favorable action 6-0 with Ms. Subject absent. The explanation offered, and it was touched upon, I think, the two early speakers we had this evening, that the article would authorize the Select Board and the Board of Assessors to negotiate and enter a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with the developers of the solar photovoltaic facility being constructed at the former Bird property at 39 Marshall Street. The Board of Assessors and Select Board unanimously in favor. It requires a simple majority. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed? So voted. Article 36 was subject to the consent agenda. Now we're going to move to Article 37.
27.
Takes a team, Liz, right? Yes. Article 27, fiscal year 2023 budget. This is the omnibus budget. To see, the articles as follows: to see what money the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds to meet expenses and outlays to town departments, salaries of town offices, sundry and miscellaneous but regular expenditures for a reserve fund, and to appoint trustees or caretakers, and authorize the Select Board to appoint caretakers of the cemeteries of the town not otherwise provided for in the ensuing year, or take any action relative thereto. The motion is as follows: move that the town raise and appropriate $65,346,245 and appropriate $3,557 from receipts reserved for appropriation related to previous bond premium. Further, to appropriate $3,078,029 from the Water Enterprise Fund, specifically $2,870,029 from water rate revenue, and $208,000 from water retained earnings to meet the expenses and outlays for town departments, salaries of town offices, sundry and miscellaneous but regular expenditures for a reserve fund, and all other expenses of the town not otherwise provided for, with all department expenses reflected in the fourth level column of the omnibus budget as presented in the warrant document on pages 47 through 50. Is there a second? The Finance Committee recommends favorable action on library budget, 5 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstaining. Mr. Alford abstained. Ms. Subject absent. The Finance Committee recommends favorable action on all other budgets, 6-0, with Ms. Subject absent. I'm content the town meeting received sufficient explanation from the Select Board and from the FinCom with respect to the budgeting process and what was offered, what was requested, what was recommended, and what's contained in the omnibus. So I think we can move on for deliberation, each departmental budget. We have a motion and a second. We'll take, and I'll solicit a vote after each departmental budget. If anyone wants to be heard, all of the articles are important, but obviously the money is important. Ms. Hine, did you want to be heard before we start the deliberation? And I'll be calling for an individual vote on each departmental budget as we go through, and if you want to be heard on any one of them, just sing out, and I'll make sure that you get heard. But go ahead. You can have the floor, Ms. Hine. Go right ahead.
Just looking to confirm that you were going to call out each budget line individually.
Yes. That would be a true race at brevity if I would just take one vote in the bottom line, and I could be subject to criticism for that. So I'll go against my instincts. All right, the first board that we're going to consider is the Select Board, and you'll note that this year, in most of the departmental budgets, it's divided into 2 line items, personnel and operating. And so I will read it as presented. With respect to the Select Board, personnel, $300,871, operating, $102,100. The total amount recommended for the Select Board is $402,971. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? So voted. A Finance Committee, personnel, $2,400. That's not a typo, Mr. Shader, is it? $2,454 for personnel, operating $210. So the recommended appropriation for the FinCom is $2,664. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? So voted. Other financial administration, reserved for transfers, $325,000, and that's the total amount. Other financial administration, $325,000. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? So voted. Town accountant, personnel, $151,573. Operating, $36,450. Total budget for the proposed for the town account is $188,023. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Board of Assessors, personnel, $202,340. Operating, $58,885 for a total budget for the Board of Assessors as proposed, $261,225. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Treasurer Collector, personnel, $314,096. Operating, $57,600. Total for the Treasurer Collector, $371,696. All those in favor? Say aye. Aye. I was calling for an aye. I didn't vote aye. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? So voted. Human Resources, personnel, $116,420. Operating, $24,510. Total for Human Resources, $140,930. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? So voted. Technology, personnel, $116,045. Operating, $151,530. Capital outlay, $45,976. Total for technology, $313,551. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? So voted. Town clerk, personnel, $161,768. Operating, $13,020. The total for the town clerk, $174,788. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? So voted. Elections, personnel, $31,661. Operating, $15,570. Total for elections, $47,231. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? So voted. Conservation Commission, Personnel, $59,996. Operating, $4,050. Total for the Conservation Commission, $64,046. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? So voted. A Planning Board, personnel, $108,038. Operating, $3,400. Total for the Planning Board, $111,438. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? So voted. Zoning Board of Appeals, personnel, $7,276. Operating budget, $3,875. Total for the Zoning Board of Appeals, $11,151. All those in favor say aye, please. All those opposed? So voted. Economic Development, personnel, 0. Operating, $14,000. Total for Economic Development, $14,000. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed? So voted. Sustainability Coordinator. Sustainability, $50,000. Total for Sustainability Coordinator, $50,000. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? So voted. Police. Personnel, $3,161,063. Operating, $214,589. Capital outlay, $1,435. Total for the police, $3,377,087. Ms. Hine?
Good evening, Tina Hine, 142 Union Street. As mentioned earlier, I'd like to request at this time that the budget be amended for the police to increase by $86,405 for the position of a 26th police officer. I'll make the motion in a minute. The offset for these increases would be addressed in Article 28, at which time I'll get back up and make another motion. The motion is to amend the police budget 01210 personal line to increase by $86,405. Does that satisfy the?
Sure. And did you do the calculation for me yet on what the total would be for the police department, or do we need to help with that?
Tina, do you need paper or do you have? Do you need paper?
No, I've got it, thank you. The total will be as it appears on page 46. Okay, that's really small. $3,463.
I'm sorry.
Nope, excuse me one second. $3,463,492.
That's the bottom line?
That is the total for the police line.
And what would the personnel item
Personnel
increase
line
to?
would be an increase of $86,405.
Okay, can somebody do that for us? Is there a second to Ms. Hine's motion? Okay. She said the new bottom line would be $3,463,492.
She didn't write that down, but she also has the new, she has the benefits to increase by.
Wait, let's deal with what's the personnel line item going to be? $3,161,063 plus the amount she's moving to amend it. What's the number?
We're adding 86,405.
I might have misunderstood the moderator's question. Were you looking for the total for the personnel line or the
No,
total
no,
for the
well,
police
both.
budget?
I'd like to know what the amended amount for the personnel line item will be, right? And what the total is, the bottom line for the police budget.
Okay, so by increasing the personnel line by $86,405,
Yeah, what does it become?
the bottom line for that.
No, no,
personnel-
what does the
Sorry.
personnel line item become?
$3,247,468.
3427.
$3,247,468.
And the bottom line becomes $3,463,492? Yes, Travis? Okay.
Yes. All set?
3,463,492. Oh, that's the police budget. Now, Tina, your motion also makes some reference to some other departmental budget.
I'll make that motion when the time comes, when you read that.
So you're going to strike that from this motion then,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Okay. All right, so the motion is to amend, and I believe we had a second, but just so we confirm the numbers, so everybody knows we're on the same page. The original motion had proposed for personnel for the police department, $3,161,063. The motion to amend is to increase that by $86,405, giving away a line item for personnel of $3,247,468. That brings the bottom line of the police department budget from $3,377,087 up to $3,463,492. And the author of the motion indicates that she'll be suggesting in a subsequent departmental budget an offsetting reduction. So that it's made and second, it's open for discussion. Yes, Mr. Shader.
Ken Shada, 676 Fifth. As I discussed earlier, I do not, while I support the idea of a 26th officer, I do not support it at this time, and neither does the FinCom, because we don't have the money for it. We have pledged to the Select Board and the Police Chief that we will work to try to make the position happen as funds allow, but right now I would urge you to vote no on this amendment and keep our budget in balance.
Okay, further discussion? Sir? Who's this fellow?
Bruce Wood, 128 Dalton Road. I understand that Ms. Hines says the funding for this will come from some other item, but if we don't agree with where that item is, we're not being given the information that we need to make an informed decision without knowing where the money is coming from now.
Go ahead, Tina, you can respond to that.
The offset for the increase in the police budget would come in the following article, Article 28, with a recommended, with an amendment rather, to the capital set aside for May. We would reduce it by the increase in Article 27, which, we'll wait to see how the article plays out, but it would be 86,405 plus what will be the next motion, which is to amend the benefits line by $21,000. So the offset will be Article 28, the next article, which is, again, to reduce the capital set aside for May, and the intention is to restore it in October when we do another capital set aside, as we traditionally have done. Does that answer your question, sir?
No, I can't have you. We've got folks at home that she's identified where she's suggesting the proposed increase in this would be offset by a reduction in a subsequent article.
Bruce Wood, 128 Dalton Road. If I understand you correctly, Tina, what you're saying is we should spend operating money, or we should spend capital money on an operating budget item, which is exactly what FinCom is telling us not to do. Does that accurately reflect what you're doing?
Okay, further discussion? Yes, sir. Oh, Michelle?
Michelle Zemer, 583 Winter Street. The Finance Committee and the Select Board have agreed on financial policies. I didn't print it out, but those financial policies are the basis for S&P's AAA ratings, and in those that we jointly agreed upon, and in those in the report that is dated April 21st, less than a month ago, S&P said, this was on Ken's slide, they said that the basis for them giving us the AAA rating and extending it was very strong management with formalized financial policies that are adhered to. And what that means is, one of the things is the money that we set aside for capital that we agreed to in attempting to reach the goal of the capital set aside, which the select board wants to take the money from for the 26th officer, which was just confirmed. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Further discussion? Ms. Hine, go right ahead. I'm sorry? Mr. Hearn?
I just want to make one clarifying point to Mr. Wood's question. So the funding source of the omnibus budget and the funding source that Ms. Hine identified in the following article are both tax levy supported, and so you're correct that the funding mechanism of the next article is to put money into capital, but the source of those funds is tax levy, which is a recurring source. So I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further discussion? Yes? Oh, Pam, I couldn't identify you with a mask on, Ms. Zico. Excuse me.
Hi, Pam Zico, 180 Fisk Street. I haven't been here in a long time, but I remember a long time ago, we didn't have capital money. We weren't able to buy police cars. We had to put off buying trucks. We had to put off buying fire engines. Our budget was a mess. We didn't have any money. It was a recession. Inflation, I don't know what it was, but we didn't have any money. When we put that all together, remember, it was Damagella time at that time, but we put that all together, and now we have a plan, and we stay with that. We buy police cars on time. We buy fire trucks when we need them. If we need one new one from Mudville to take the corners now, maybe we'll have to buy one of those. But we've had we have AAA. A lot of towns don't have that. We've put a lot of money away. I hate to see us stray from that. I think there's more discussion. Maybe we do need a police officer, but I know that $86,000, $86,000, that keeps going up every year. We got to come up with that money every year. And I understand. You did a great presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes, sir.
Tarek Tabara, 757 Highland Street. The jump in the rating, in the S&P rating, what have you calculated the financial impact of those savings that would be gone? Was that just a one-notch drop if we went from AAA to AA plus, was it?
Just to clarify, the way the rating actually works is when you go to issue debt, the ratings agency will either reiterate the rating they have for you or they'll issue a new rating depending on what they feel the situation is. So the issue is, it's possible that, if you look at the negative consequences of doing this, to me, the biggest negative consequence is moving off our adhered policies. They specifically cited that we'd be going against our policy and lowering the capital set aside when we know it has to be bigger. So I just don't think it's a smart financial move. But from the ratings agency's perspective, we wouldn't really see the impact, and it's tough to quantify because it depends on a lot of factors when the bond is issued, what the interest rates are, and what the spread ends up becoming. What I can tell you is, with our AAA rating for the water treatment plant, we had a much stronger response to that debt offering because it was AAA rated, and in times of difficulty, people looking for, investors looking to put their money in safer places are looking for the highest rated securities.
And it was at 8 million. Those were already issued. Those were issued. And then what's the next one then? The point is, the point is that by keeping that rating, we'd be able to keep those savings to be able to have more realistic possibilities to actually hire and increase the operating plan down the road. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes, Henry? No, okay. Jay, excuse me. You're sitting there. I can see that.
Jay Leary, 146 Karen Circle. Two questions. One is for the Finance Committee, and the second one is for the Town Administrator. Both are seemingly in agreement with a number that is $86,000 less than the one proposed by the Select Board. Why is there a variation in there? I think I know the answer. And secondly, I think what Mr. Shada was saying in his presentation, and I know when I was a member of the Finance Committee and made a mistake by spending capital money that I had a problem with the next year, it's not advisable that you use capital funds for ongoing operating expenses, yet that is what's being proposed here to do. While I am in agreement that the Holliston Police Department could benefit by the 26th officer, I think until we can get a funding mechanism that is in place, that is not taking from capital, we should adhere to the policies that we have followed and promulgated and not deviate from that. But I would like an answer from both the Town Administrator and the Finance Committee as to why you're in agreement and the Select Board is not.
The difference is the 26th officer. That's the entirety of the difference. And I'll point out that, you know, one of the things that we did this year with regards to this was we sent feedback to the Select Board about the financial constraints and their request for the Grounds Division and their request for the Police Department. And the feedback we got back was we would prefer the grounds first. So that was why the Finance Committee chose to fund that. We would have, had it been identified as the top priority of the Select Board, we might have thought about things differently. But given that we couldn't do both, we thought that the Grounds Division was the one that everybody had agreed to. So, but as far as the numbers, the only difference between what is in the Select Board number and our number is this amendment.
Mr. Cronin?
Thank you. John Cronin, 40 Holly Lane. Once more, this is not capital money. It's not. This is operating money. This is surplus dollars that the town has generated. We're choosing to put less towards capital expenditures in the fall than what the Finance Committee is, to the tune of about $86,000. That's the choice. We see the priority of the 26th police officer as more important than putting money towards capital expenditures in the fall. I want to say it one more time. We're not using capital money for operating purposes. This is surplus, this is operating dollars. Thank you.
Mr. Murphy? Sure.
Mr. Cronin is correct from a technical standpoint. I just want to say, the gentleman asked, well, what's the next few things coming down the line? As the chair of the subcommittee that deals with all the CapEx, we have a purview of 5 years, which everybody can see because it's on the town websites. Two biggest things right now we see potentially are the DPW Water Department facility and also maybe potentially a new high school that we're sitting in. The biggest thing with the DPW highway or water facility is most likely our goal is not to ask the town to do an override. We want to keep it within the limit, which is basically all this 2.5% every year and all this money that we already have. Part of the reason we want to keep the same amount going in and maybe increase it next year for capital is for that purpose, so that we're not going to go to the town and ask them, hey, we need to build the facility, let's do an override. We know in the back of our head, we keep hearing from the schools, they're going to be coming, and we know that's a huge amount of money, and we want to avoid that. So John is correct, this is all coming from the same source, but the reason we want to be disciplined partly is because of S&P 500, I'm sorry, S&P, Standard & Poor's, we get the AAA rating, and because we know the things that are coming out there. All the studies that the Select Board have requested, these things are going to cost money, and we support them, but so we're aware of these things. So that's why we want to put on hold the 26th police officer. We'll look at it in the fall or maybe next spring. It's not going to go forever, It's just for the time being, our policy is this is the same exact amount we had for this year. We didn't want to increase it. We understood all our resources. We're limited, but we wanted to keep it the same. So that's why we do not want to cut capital, the amount going into the capital amount.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Any further discussion? Yes, Tina?
So I mentioned earlier that these budget requests are based in part on constantly updating financial analysis. And, you know, it's a choice that town meeting needs to make. I respect the work of the Finance Committee. I do. It is a choice that we all need to make. In terms of this need to follow our financial policies, I agree with this. We are proposing that we do this. We are proposing that we do this somewhat here in May. I recognize I'm suggesting an offset reduction in, an offset in the capital set aside in Article 28, but we have October town meeting. And that updating financial analysis gives confidence to the fact that when we are back here in October, we will be making another set aside. We will adhere to our financial policies. The need is now. The 26th police officer has been requested 3 years in a row. We could kick it down the road. We could come back and consider it in October, but the need is now. At this point, given the conversation, the level of interest seems to be here for this discussion. I'd like to recognize Chief Stone, who is prepared to speak to the benefit, the need for the 26th police officer for the town of Holliston.
Hi, good evening. Matthew Stone, Chief of Police. Just a few, like Ms. Hines stated earlier, this is our third year in a row requesting this 26th police officer. We understand that COVID obviously affected all of us, excuse me, so we waited in line for FY22 and now back in line for FY23. A number of things factor into the reason we're requesting this additional officer. A lot of it has to do with the calls for service that we're receiving. The span of police services that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. It's also following federal and state local recommendations that the FBI requires for population size and call volume. Our complexity of calls, officer safety and wellness, and we were asked to provide a level service budget to the community. And with the 26th officer, although it is adding full-time equivalent position, it's providing the same level of service. It's allowing the specialty positions that we have in the department not to be affected by that. So by having the officers, we're also seeing a reduction in overtime, so having shifts that are fully staffed, adequately staffed to go on calls. We're not relying on overtime funds to do that, which you actually would see a reduction in our operating budget because of that. Right now with the officers, if we have an officer call out sick or not able to make a call, we fill that with overtime and so forth. Several of our calls require a minimum of 2 police officers. So with the number of officers working, say on a shift like tonight, a call for service or 2 calls for service takes up our entire shift. Everybody's tied up on a call, which means there's no proactive police work being done in town. There's no neighborhoods being patrolled. I don't know if anybody follows safewise.com, but they just came out in 2022 with the safest cities and towns in America. In Massachusetts. There are 351 cities and towns. Holliston ranked number 22. That's not by accident. And I stand before you as the chief, but also to advocate for my officers. I was once out on the road doing this, but it's the men and women that are out there now doing it tonight on the road. I have several officers here at the building with us protecting our streets. So it's a compound request. That's not addressing police reform and the new post commission and the requirements required by the police reform law. We fully support the police reform law. We fully endorse all of the requirements. However, there's no funding source from the state to do that. So we're required to do additional training. We're required to do certification. None of that is funded through the state. It unfortunately falls on local government and local towns. So My job as the chief is to plan, predict, and prepare for the future, and officer number 26 is just one step closer to where we should be. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. I think the topic, I'll give you the last word, sir. I think the topic, I'm sorry, Ken, go ahead, then I'll call the gentleman.
Okay. I just wanted to have, several things have been thrown out here. Just to be clear, everything that Chief Stone just mentioned, and I absolutely applaud the work of our police. I don't want this to be interpreted as anything negative against our police department. They do a great job. We reviewed all the things that he just pointed out, including the service, the increased mental health issues. In fact, it was specifically mentioned as to whether we needed to add a clinician, because we have a part-time clinician that goes out on some police calls, whether we need to add another clinician, and the response was, no, we don't have the current one we have fully utilized yet. We talked about these things, about the staffing and everything like that, and there's no question that we would want to make this happen at some point. But now is not the time. With regards to the unfunded mandates, the chief is absolutely right. The state does that to us constantly. But there's also a law in Massachusetts that requires the state auditor to look for unfunded mandates, and when they are identified as unfunded mandates, by law, the state must fund them. So when that happens, and I can tell you right now, the police reform law he's referring to is on that list right now from the auditor. So there may be money coming down the road for the officer or for additional police support. In addition, you've heard that the capital set aside is not capital, it's recurring revenue. That's kind of correct. We put aside an amount of money every year to fund the capital expenses that we have annually. Going against that and lowering that not only below what we funded last year, but below what our policy is, says will cost us far more in the long run when we look to fund the other priorities that the Select Board have. So I would urge everybody to vote no on this amendment, stick to the budget we have. The Finance Committee has pledged to both the Select Board and the Police Department to work hard to make this 26th officer happen down the road. But now is not the time. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to move the question.
I'm going to call on Mr. Rabinowitz, and I'm going to give Mr. Cronin the last word, then I'll entertain the motion to move the question.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. David Rabinowitz, 92 Wingate Road. This is going to be on point. It won't sound like it, but back in the fall, I talked about the host community agreement impact fees and how they're only supposed to be used for issues directly related to marijuana impacts in town. The recently retired chairman of the Cannabis Control Commission, when the HCA issue became a big issue, indicated that if the town is making inspections of marijuana facilities, that's something that's recoverable out of the HCA fees. Now, from the fall, as I recall, we tabled the issue of transferring those fees. So all those host community impact fees, I suspect, are still sitting in the town's general budget. And I don't know, Chief, whether your department inspects the many marijuana operators that are in town, but if they do on a regular basis, my understanding from what Steve Hoffman said, the recently departed chairman of the commission, is that activity should be able to be recoverable economically from the host community impact fees. And while I've been against the general spending of HCA fees for things that aren't directly related, if you're inspecting those facilities, I would think a big chunk of that $86,000 should be able to come out of those funds. And my recollection from the fall was those funds haven't been touched yet. Now, I may be wrong on that. I'm sure the Select Board can correct me on it. But if that's the case, there's a place to find the $86,000.
Thank you. Mr. Cronin, I'll give you the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Cronin, 40 Holly Lane. With all due respect to the Finance Committee's remarks, now is the time. As Chief Stone indicated, this is the third time this matter has come before you. The Select Board had a vote on this matter and looked very hard at solutions to present to you, town meeting, to make this choice. We recognize the Finance Committee's opinion on this, but frankly, $86,000 makes us a lot safer. It brings us a lot closer to the goals within the Police Department's strategic plan, which we all embrace, including the Finance Committee. So I appeal to you this evening to vote in favor of this particular article. It is very important for our public safety. It's affordable. It's part of our tax base. It is not capital money. So please vote favorably. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll move to a vote on it now. This requires a majority vote, so we'll try a voice vote first and see how successful we are with that. The motion to amend is to increase the personnel line item of the police department budget by $86,405, which will bring that line item to $3,247,468, with a corresponding increase by $86,405 to the bottom line of that police department budget, which would then make it $3,463,492. Okay. All those in favor of the motion to amend, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? No. I'm going to have a show of hands on that. I suspect it didn't pass, but I want to have a show of a hand vote to confirm it. We have counters? Yep. Okay. Counters, please proceed to take your sections, please.
All those in favor? All those in favor?
All those in favor, I'm sorry, all those in favor, raise your hand, please. Sorry. I think it went down. Yeah.
1-6? One four?
Yeah, speak.
You can speak.
You can speak up
Okay.
loud. Yeah, it's not
okay.
secret.
You don't have to whisper.
14, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. 18.
Okay, and all those opposed? Yeah.
Thank you. $12. Thank you. 27.
That's the difference here. Okay, that vote is 65 in favor, 80 opposed. The amendment fails. We'll now move to a vote on the main motion, unamended, proposing that the personnel line item for the police department be $3,161,063, operating $214,459, capital outlay 1,435, for a total departmental appropriation of $3,377,087. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Auxiliary police, $16,002. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Fire department, personnel, $860,259. Operating budget, $98,670. Capital outlay, $13,608, for total departmental budget of $972,537. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Ambulance, personnel, $432,338. Operating, $175,400, for total budget of $607,738. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Building inspection, personnel, $207,612. Operating budget, $19,000. Capital outlay, $500. Building inspection department, $227,112. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? So voted. Emergency management, personnel, $5,000, operating, $12,061. Total for emergency management, $17,061. All those in favor say aye, please. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Animal control, $38,000. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Department of Public Works Highway, personnel, $1,014,166. Operating, $351,311. Capital outlay, $300,000. Department of Public Works Highway, $1,665,477. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Facilities Manager, Personnel, $100,524. Operating budget, $184,700. Facilities Manager, $285,224. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, so voted. DPW Snow and Ice, Personnel, $50,000. Operating, $200,000. DPW Snow and Ice, $250,000. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Street Lighting, $99,170. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Solid Waste, $1,376,118. All those in favor, say aye. Those opposed, excuse me, so voted. Excuse me. Wastewater, $97,700. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Motor vehicle fuels, $135,000. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Board of Health, $161,044. Operating, $8,450 for a total for the Board of Health of $169,494. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Council on Aging, Personnel, $218,637. Operating, $55,340. Council on Aging, $273,977. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Youth Services, Set Personnel, $148,125. Operating, $17,200. For Youth Services, a total of $165,325. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Veteran Services, $44,489. Benefits, $50,000. Total for Veteran Services, $94,489. Say aye if you're in favor. Those opposed, so voted. Library, Personnel, $382,632. Operating budget, $179,396. $396, excuse me, $179,396. Total for the library, $562,028. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Park Department Personnel, $137,545. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Rail Trail, $5,000. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, so voted. Celebrations, $2,300. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, so voted. And on to the last page. County Retirement, $2,607,227. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Workers' Compensation, $360,200. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Unemployment, $50,000. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Employee benefits, $7,999,027. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, so voted. Liability insurance, $336,306. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, so voted. School Department, $38,845,279. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, so voted. Keefe Technical School, $1,471,091. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, so voted. Debt Service, operating $4,000. Debt service, $623,574. Total for debt service, $627,574. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, so voted. Department of Public Works, Water, Personnel, $763,298. Benefits, $243,566. Operating, $791,620. Capital outlay, $15,000. Total for debt service, $1,264,554. Total for DPW water,
545.
I should strike that, 1 million, debt service, $1,264,545. Total for DPW water, $3,078,029. All those in favor say aye. So voted. What article are we on to now, Liz?
Excellent. We are now on Article 28. 28.
Oh, that's my old one. Just 1 second, folks. '27 was the omnibus?
Yep.
Okay.
28.
Article 28, transfer from available funds a sum of money for the capital expenditure fund, sponsored by the Select Board, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a transfer from available funds a sum of money for the capital expenditure fund or take any action relative thereto. The motion is moved that the town raise and appropriate $1,875,000 for the capital expenditure fund. The explanation is as follows. It's been the custom of the town to annually transfer from reserves a sum of money to the capital expenditure fund to be used at the October special town meeting to fund capital expenditure requests. The Select Board voted 2-1 in favor of a $1,715,000 1.715 appropriation to the fund for May 22 annual town meeting. The FinCom voted in favor of $1,875,000 appropriation to the fund. So the motion is moved to the town raise and appropriate $1,875,000 for the capital expenditure fund. Is there a second? Second. This requires a simple majority. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Was the capital expenditure fund part of the consent agenda?
No.
No, it's carved out. Okay. Article 29, capital expenditures, sponsored by the Select Board, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds or borrow a sum of money for the purpose of capital expenditures, including maintenance and new vehicles and equipment for the schools, Select Board, facilities maintenance, fire, police, and public works, and authorize the Select Board to trade or sell used equipment toward part of the purchase price or take any action relative thereto. The motion is moved that the town appropriate $897,555 from the capital expenditure fund and $136,250 from the water retained earnings for the purpose listed in the article. And the article is printed in the warrant, identifies some 15 or so departments and particular items with the estimated cost, the total of which is $1,033,805. Is there a second? The explanation tendered is that the town approves capital requests in both May and October, with larger requests generally scheduled for the fall town meeting when free cash is certified. The list above are items that have been vetted and represented in the town's 5-year capital improvement plan, FY 2022 to 26. The balance of the capital expenditure fund as of March 31, 2022 was $8.4 million. See page 55 of the warrant for details. And the total impact of capital costs in this warrant are offset by the funding to the capital expenditure fund. See Article 28 above. The enterprise fund pays for its own equipment. The Finance Committee recommends the town appropriate a total of $897,555 from the capital expenditure fund as follows: $10,000 for a microfilm machine with accessories for finance, $16,250 for a skid unit for a brush truck fire, $15,950 for medical CPR device for the ambulance, $65,000 for exterior painting of Town Hall, $12,150 for HVAC at Town Hall, $120,000 for ongoing improvements at Central Fire, $16,250 to replace a 5-ton trailer for DPW, $24,000 to replace an asphalt roller for DPW, $13,005 to replace a leaf truck vacuum for DPW, $249,950 to replace an international dump truck with equipment for DPW, $275,000 for technology improvements at the schools. Further, the FinCom recommends the town appropriate a total of $136,250 from water retained earnings for the DPW Water Division as follows: $54,000 for an equipped pickup truck, $66,000 for mini excavator, $16,250 for tilt trailer. Further, the FinCom recommends the town appropriate $20,000 from the capital expenditure fund for interior cameras at the schools, subject to the adoption of a camera policy. 6-0 with Ms. Subject absent. We have the motion. Is there a second? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say, strike that. This requires a 2/3 vote, excuse me, because it's use of capital expenditure funds. So just proceed on that basis. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Article 30, a street light conversion to LED. You heard the FinCom's explanation of this earlier in the evening. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a transfer from available funds a sum of money for the purpose of converting street lights to LED or take any action relative thereto. The motion is moved that the town appropriate $354,900 from the capital expenditure fund for the purpose stated in the article. And I won't repeat the explanation given by department, by the FinCom and the Select Board if they had weighed in on it earlier. Is there a second to the motion? This requires a 2/3 vote because it's requiring the use of capital expenditure funds, so we'll proceed on a voice vote. All those in favor of the article say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Article 31, Water Systems Improvement, Central Street to Bullard Street and Fisk Street Culvert, sponsored by the Select Board, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for the purpose of replacing water mains in the area of Central Street and Bullard Street, to provide bi-directional flow and for culvert improvements under Fisk Street, or take any action relative thereto. The motion is moved that the town appropriate $800,000 from the water infrastructure fee account for the purpose stated in the article. The offered explanation is that the top priority project from the Stantec Water Modernization Study finalized in late 2021. This project has been designed with funding from the October 21 Fall Town Meeting and is shovel-ready. The purpose of the project is to provide bi-directional flow of water supplied to the entire system from the water treatment plant at well number 5, scheduled to become online in September of 2022. The FinCom recommended the town appropriate $800,000 from the water infrastructure fee account for the purpose stated in the article. 6-0 with Ms. Subject absent. Is there a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Report of the Community Preservation Committee. The article is to see if the town will vote to act on the report of the Community Preservation Committee for fiscal year 2022 community preservation budget and to appropriate or reserve for later appropriation monies from Community Preservation Fund annual revenues for available funds for the administrative expenses of the Community Preservation Committee, the payment of debt service, the undertaking of community preservation projects, and all of the necessary and proper expenses for the year. Under reserves, community housing reserve, the sought appropriation of $71,000, same for open space reserve, and same for historic resources reserve. With respect to appropriations, administrative functions to support the committee, $5,000, cemetery preservation, $500,000, Blair Square site improvements, $568,785, community farm improvements, Sunset Extension, $55,000. The total sought is $1,128,785. The motion is moved to appropriate annual community preservation reserves as presented in the warrant, and further to appropriate $973,785 from general reserve, parens undesignated fund balance, and $100,000 from historic preservation reserve for the amounts printed in the warrant, with the funding for the community farm improvements acting as an extension of the sunset provision of a previously approved budget. Is there a second? The FinCom recommend favorable action, 5 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention. Ms. Zimmer abstained. Mr. Subject was absent. Ms. Subject was absent, excuse me. The suggested explanation is that the total balance of Community Preservation Fund as of May 2022 annual town meeting is approximately $3.8 million. So this requires a majority vote. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed? So voted. Report of the Comprehensive Long-Range Plan Commission, envisioning future Holliston, sponsored by the Town Administrator. To hear a report from the Comprehensive Long-Range Plan Committee, also known as Envisioning Future Holliston, pursuant to the charge established at the May 21 Annual Town Meeting, or take any action relative thereto. Move that an interim report of the Comprehensive Long-Range Plan Committee, also known as Envisioning Future Holliston, be accepted. The explanation is offered as followed. Article 35 of the May 21 Annual Town Meeting established the Comprehensive Long-Range Plan Committee, known as Envisioning Future Holliston, and the charge includes an update to the May 22 Annual Town Meeting. The group has executed and analyzed one community-wide survey and will present an update to Town Meeting with plans for additional work to the October 22 Fall Town Meeting. Is there a second? Any discussion? Oh, yes, go right ahead, sir.
Good evening, Ken Henderson, 1028 Washington Street.
Matt Pavinsky, 95 Overlook Drive. And we are here today to go over for the next few hours the... Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, we are here today to go over briefly the work of the Comprehensive Long-Term Planning Committee. Just a reminder that this committee was formed last May. And was a result formed with the 17 committee members, so I being on Youth and Family Services, Ken handling Rail Trail, and then all the other committees are represented as part of it. We were basically tasked to create a vision for the future of Holliston, and we talked a lot about the future today, but I think the biggest words in the article was for us to be aspirational, to really try to get input from the town, from the residents, and figure out what we really want Holliston to look like. So our work to date so far is you've probably seen some of our surveys. We've been building websites. We've gotten about 400 folks to fill out the surveys, and we appreciate everybody who has done that. 400, they tell me, is statistically a good number for our town, but we want more input. So we're going to be reaching out over the summer for a second survey. We're going to be having town sessions, which we couldn't do during COVID, but we're really looking for everybody's feedback, and I appreciate when we reach out if you can get us that feedback. Ken is just going to give a quick update as far as what we've seen so far in the surveys.
As you can see, we've used the 8-arch bridge as a mental model as well as a physical model. The idea being, of course, we have quite a strong history, and we want to build on that, of course, and some of us actually were making some of that history back a while ago. But also, we're in the present, so we're crossing that bridge and, of course, forging into the future, and what would we expect that future to look like? That's why we need so much input. We have found that already certain factions of our demographics tend to respond rather well, in quite a bit of volume. We'd like to be sure there's a broad support for a lot of the ideas of where our future will take us. It also helps us, oh, let me back up. We don't have the authority to impose any vision on any committee or board within the town, but it does give those decision makers a view of where our residents would like to see the town progress toward, which helps us also, of course, at town meetings, but also in the whole idea of serving on a committee and not being in isolation from everybody else. So hopefully a common vision is what we're after. As you can see by the pillars, the key words on the vertical stone, we work here, we live here, many of us play here, we create and we learn as many of the basic pillars that make a town strong. A lot of the other smaller words, which you probably strained to see, are frequently used words that people chose to share in their open-ended comments or in their ideas about our town. So our next step, we have received information. We'd like to drill down a little deeper and find out really what are some of those words mean to the people that have already responded on our survey, but also many more of you that should. So please sign up, first of all, with the idea that you'll be kept up to date. Nothing like having a vision and having a little idea where it's going. We are going to be much stronger due to, hopefully, less COVID in our lives, but to hold meet and greets and forums to really get to talk to people more and get a little more definition as to where your ideas may be taking you. And we'll be presenting, of course, in the fall town meeting with the wrap-up of what our data has been showing and with an overall general report. Matt?
So the report, you could have picked, the general report is in the back. There's all the details, all those words that Ken was referring to. For just a note, shout out for our seniors. You're going to be filling out a survey from UMass Boston, but looking to also make this connection with our survey as well. So looking for your feedback basically in both areas. And to Ken's point, we did have a good majority of, I think it was the 35 to 40, 45 folks that answered the survey. So right now that's the majority of the input we had. So looking for the younger generation and definitely looking for the seniors to fill those out. So thank you for your time. If there's any questions, comments, our website or email is in the packet. We're happy to address them and hope you all have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, then the motion is to accept the interim report. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? How could you refuse to accept an interim report? I mean, that's kind of a silly point. But nonetheless, so voted. Article 34, the 300th anniversary preparation sponsored by the Select Board to provide for funding associated with the town's 300th celebration, further to direct the Select Board to apply and receive any federal or state grants or other funds available for this year-long event, consider any application for town events and activities in recognition of the anniversary, and to act as the executive authority for all permits, liabilities, and other municipal obligations, or take any action relative thereto. The motion is moved to appropriate $300,000 from free cash for the purpose stated in this article. Is there a second? The FinCom recommends the town appropriate $30,000 from free cash for the purpose stated in the article, 6-0 with Ms. Subject absent. The explanation is that the article recognizes the commencement of activities associated with this notable anniversary, which is the 300th anniversary. The Select Board endeavors to encourage all levels of community involvement, engagement, and volunteerism in the spirit of public good for the town of Holliston. Requires a majority vote. All those in favor of that appropriation say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Article 35, sponsored by the Select Board, transfer from available funds a sum of money for the stabilization fund to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money for the stabilization fund or take any action relative thereto. The motion is to indefinitely postpone. Is there a second? Second. No explanation needed. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? So voted. Article 36 is a zoning article sponsored by the Planning Board to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws, making the following changes at section I-C, pre-existing non-conforming uses, structures and lots, and I-E definitions in order to address an inconsistency in the definition of applicability of the gross floor area and to generally identify a special permit granting authority rather than to specify the ZBA note, and the warrant identifies the italicized and bold text as proposed and the strike-through of the deleted text. It's too lengthy for me to read, but let me simply indicate that the motion is to town accept the zoning bylaw amendments as printed in the warrant. Is there a second? I will note that as all zoning articles, we do have a letter from the zoning board, from the planning board, with respect to Article 36 addressed to me, care of Liz, indicating with regards to the proposed amendment to the zoning bylaws at section I-C, pre-existing non-conforming uses, structures, lots, and I-E definitions, I would respectfully report that the Planning Board held a public hearing as required by Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 5, on April 14, 2022. The members voted 5 in favor, 0 opposed, to recommend support of the proposed article as printed in the warrant as proposed by the Building Commissioner in consultation with Town Council. If you have any questions, board members will be present at the meeting. Sincerely, Karen Apuzzo Langton, Chairwoman. There's a second to the motion. Requires a 2/3 vote Karen, do you want to make a presentation, or you just want to respond to questions? Karen Sherman, the town planner, is here in case there are questions. Is there any discussion? If not, then we'll proceed to a vote. Again, it's a 2/3 vote, so we'll test my hearing. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That passes. Article 37, change to accept. This is also a zoning article subject to this similar process. Article 37, change to accessory buildings and structures, V-A, location of districts, 2-B, definitions, I-E, sponsored by the Planning Board, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws at sections I-E, 2-B, location of districts, and V-A, accessory buildings and structures, to update several definitions and performance standards, and to update the zoning map interpretations and standards. Note in the article, as published in the warrant, you'll note the italicized and bold text is proposed, and the strike-through text is being deleted. And it's clearly set forth in the warrant. The motion is that the town accept the zoning bylaw amendment as printed in the warrant. Is there a second? The explanation, the brief explanation offered, and again, Karen Sherman is here to explain a further explanation as requested by any member here this evening. These proposed changes are being advanced in order to provide additional controls on placement of accessory structures on lots to address safety, i.e. fire separation, and congestion, as there are no current limitations on the size or number of accessory structures allowed on a lot. Minimal separation of accessory structures from lot lines and other structures, and a limit on the percentage coverage in the side yard area are proposed. The Planning Board voted unanimously in favor. Toward that end, I have a letter as required statutorily from the Planning Board to me, care of Liz, indicating, dear Mr. Moderator, with respect to the proposed amendment to the zoning bylaws at section I-C, pre-existing non-conforming uses, structures and lots, and I-E definitions, I would respectfully report that the Planning Board held a public hearing as required by Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, on April 14, 2022. The members voted 5-0 to recommend support of the proposed article as printed in the warrant and proposed by the Building Commissioner in consultation with Town Council. If you have any questions, please direct them to us. Sincerely, Karen Apruzo Langton, Chairwoman. The motion having been made and seconded, again, a zoning article requiring a 2/3 vote. Is there discussion? Yes, sir?
Hey everybody, Mark Rosenfeld, 7 Springdale Circle. I appreciate the intent of the article. As I read through it, it wouldn't allow, just for an example, it wouldn't allow, or would seem not to allow a pool shed to be built within 10 feet of a pool deck or any other, pool structure. It's right there. Any appurtenant element, for example, a pool deck, shall not be constructed, altered, or relocated so any part would be, within 10 feet of any other building or structure. So, like I said, I appreciate the intent of it, but I think it just needs to be revised to fix that and maybe readdressed at fall town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes, Jay?
J. Leary, 146 Karen Circle. Much like the last gentleman that spoke, I'd like to see if we can get some clarification about how would this impact people that already had existing accessory structures on their property that this new bylaw might change, and would they be subject to removal of those accessory structures or changing them to be in conformance with this zoning regulation if that passed?
Karen, Jay, do you want to handle that, Jay? Or Karen, do you have somebody that wants to talk about whether they're grandfathered or not?
So those, the existing structures, if they didn't comply, would be grandfathered, so they would not have to be changed.
Okay. Yes, sir?
Again, Mark Rosenfeld, 7 Springdale. I'll build on Mr. Leary's comment. If you have what would then be currently non-conforming grandfathered structure, i.e. a shed or whatnot, and it needed to be repaired, there's a wording in here that says it may not be altered. Before it just said it couldn't, it couldn't be located. Now it says it can't be constructed, altered, or relocated. So altered would ostensibly mean that you couldn't repair said accessory use building. Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move to a vote on the article as the motion as presented. All those in favor of the motion say aye. All those opposed? It requires a 2/3 vote, so we're going to proceed to a hand vote on this article, please. All those in favor of the motion, please raise their hand. I'm sorry, we're voting on Article 37. The motion is made, as I had read previously. In favor or against? In favor. All those in favor of the article, motion, raise their hand.
Three.
All those opposed, raise their hand, please. Wow, everybody's against it. Take your time, sir.
26. No, they don't. They don't. No, would you? 54? No. Sorry, 54.
What is it? Okay, the vote was 30 in favor, 54 opposed, so it's defeated. That just goes to show what the benefit of a hand count, because I thought it was much closer to that, even different. So that article is defeated. Article 38, another zoning article sponsored by the Planning Board, to see if the town will vote to amend the zoning bylaws at sections I-E definitions and 3-use regulations to clarify general service establishments, warehouses, and general industrial uses, as well as accessory and outdoor storage uses. Note, the italicized and bold text is proposed and strike-through text is to be deleted, and there are any number of different deletions and use regulations and modifications contained herein. The motion is moved that the town accept the zoning bylaw amendment as printed in the warrant. Is there a second? The explanation offered is as follows. These proposed changes are being made to provide additional clarity to the definition and regulation of several commercial, industrial, and accessory uses, including warehouse, by special permit in the industrial zone only. General service establishments, special permits in commercial and village commercial, commercial and industrial zones, and relocating outdoor uses to accessory uses, and redefine storage uses as either open and accessory commercial storage by special permit or processing of raw materials by special permit. The Planning Board voted unanimously in favor, and toward that end, I have a letter from the Planning Board to me, care of Liz, dated May 6, 2022. Dear Mr. Moderator, with respect to the proposed amendment to the zoning bylaws at Section 3, use regulations and I-E definitions, I would respectfully report that the Planning Board held a public hearing as required by Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 5, on April 14, 2022. The members voted 5-0 to recommend support of the proposed article as printed in the warrant, as developed by the Planning Board in consultation with Town Council, the Building Commissioner, and the Town Planner. Sincerely, Karen Apuzzo-Langton, Chairwoman. So that we have that recommendation from the Planning Board. All right, the motion is made and seconded. It's open to discussion. Any discussion? Okay, this requires a 2/3 vote as it's a zoning bylaw change. We'll try a voice vote first. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? That carries. Article 39.
He said
By 2/3. Okay, by 2/3. Thank you. Unless I forget later, I do enjoy the terrific support of town council and the town clerk and the assistant, and I want to acknowledge that lest I forget in the press to entertain a motion to adjourn later. I'm grateful for their help. Article 39, sponsored by the Select Board, General Bylaws, Section 12, swimming pools, to see if the town will vote to amend its general bylaws by deleting in its entirety Section 12 of Article XXIV pertaining to swimming pools. Move that the town accept the general bylaw amendment as printed in the warrant. The explanation offered is as follows. Section 12 of the zoning bylaws was approved in 1980 in lieu of building codes that address swimming pools. However, the Commonwealth has since adopted building codes for swimming pools, and the most current code is the 2015 International Swimming Pool and Spa Code from ICC. Especially Section 12 of the town bylaws requires a barrier height of 5 feet, while the building code is 4 feet. Removal of Section 12 would put the town in alignment with Massachusetts State Building Code 780 CMR 9th edition. Majority vote is required as this is a bylaw change and not a zoning bylaw change. So all those, any discussion? I'm sorry, yes. Jay? Do I have a second on the motion or not? No, can I have a second on the motion, please? Oh, I'm sorry, Jay, go right ahead.
J. Larry, 146 Karen Circle. Mr. Tellerman, again, on this, would this be a grandfathered for those people that have swimming pools? Would that be grandfathered if they did not have a 5-foot fence by this?
Well, this isn't zoning, so there's no grandfathering, but my understanding...
General bylaw, excuse me.
My understanding is that this is reducing the required height.
Okay, so it's going to the 5 to 4?
Right, I mean,
Okay,
you'd like
all
the
right.
5-foot fence.
I thought it was going the opposite way. Thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, this requires a simple majority because it's a bylaw change and not a zoning bylaw change. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So voted. Article 40, road acceptances, sponsored by the Select Board, to see if the town will vote to accept as public ways Hopping Brook Station 0+00 to Station 40+93.02 and Boynton Road in the Hopping Brook definitive subdivision as shown on the plan entitled Roadway Acceptance Plan in Holliston, Mass. Dated October 18, 2001, revised through December 2022, prepared by Schofield Brothers of New England, Inc. and Indian Ridge Road South, Station 0+25 to 0+51.55 in the Clearview Estates 2 subdivision as shown on the plan entitled Street Acceptance Indian Ridge South, formerly James Road, Clearview Estates 2 in Holliston, Mass. Dated March 13, 2014, prepared by Gary and Halnan, Inc., and such ways having been laid out as townways by the Select Board, and will further vote to authorize the Select Board to acquire by donation, purchase, or eminent domain rights sufficient to use Hopping Brook Road, Boynton Road, and Indian Ridge Road South, all purposes for which public ways are used in the town of Holliston, or take any action relative thereto. The motion is move to accept the street acceptances as printed in the warrant and to authorize the Select Board to take any and all actions associated therewith, including the acceptance of deeds and appurtenant easements with respect thereto, provided, however, that this acceptance is contingent upon the present owner and the developer of the subject streets completing the remaining work on the roads to the satisfaction of the Planning Board within 120 days of the passage of this motion. But do we have a second? Thank you. By way of explanation, all of these ways have previously been accepted by the actions of town meeting and have been subject to prior hearings by the Select Board per Mass General Law, Chapter 82. Ken, I note that my addition of the warrant says the FinCom will make a recommendation to town meeting. Have your group had a chance to consider this and have a recommendation for us?
Yeah, as I mentioned in my presentation, we voted our pre-meeting unanimously to recommend favorable action.
Great, thank you. This requires a majority vote. All those in, strike that. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. So voted. Article 41. The article is to expand the Select Board to 5 members, sponsored by a citizen petition. The article reads as follows: to see if the town will vote to expand the Select Board to 5 members by replacing Article 3, Section 1 of the Town of Holliston General Bylaws with the following. Number 1, membership and term of office. The town shall have a Select Board consisting of 5 members elected for a term of 3 years each, and so elected that the term of no more than 2 shall expire in any 1 year. By directing the Select Board to hold a special election within 180 days from the conclusion of the 2020 annual town meeting for the purpose of electing 2 new members, with 1 member being elected for a 2-year term and 1 member being elected for a 3-year term, and by raising and appropriating an amount sufficient to fund the cost of the special election or take any action relative thereto. As I described at the town meeting earlier in the evening, this is in the nature of a citizen's petition, and as such, the petitioner has avail themselves of the opportunity to submit an article via a citizen's petition to the Board of Selectmen for inclusion in the warrant. As the article was directly affecting the size of the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Selectmen, notwithstanding having received an opinion from council indicating that the article as presented cannot accomplish the desired purpose because it conflicts with existing state law, included the article in the warrant for passage on for consideration by me. It's my decision to either include or to exclude an article that has a non-lawful purpose. Now, the stated purpose of this article is to expand the Board of Selectmen from 3 members to 5 members. The article was the subject of an article at the last special town meeting, at which time it was taken up, it was considered at that time, as I recall, the Town Government Study Committee weighed in and indicated they were going to examine the article, and the article was indefinitely postponed, I think with the understanding that it would return at a subsequent town meeting. And no issue was raised at that time with respect to the legality of the issue, or if the issue was raised, the response was that perhaps since on its surface the town doesn't operate under a charter, that it may well be in proper legal form. It may have been incumbent upon me to have researched that article in more detail before ruling on it at that time, but I allowed the debate to continue. Nonetheless, it was indefinitely postponed. The article, when it was submitted at this time for the warrant, made it subject to a request for an opinion from council. And council looked at it, carefully researched the article, and indicated that notwithstanding the desire of the petitioner to accomplish the goal presented here by seeking to modify the town bylaw, that with respect to the specific issue of expanding a Board of Selectmen from 3 to 5 members, that cannot be accomplished because there is state law that prohibits the passage of a bylaw to effectuate that type of a change. I was provided with that opinion. I read it carefully, and I concur with it. I was contacted by Ms. Necessian, who's the petitioner, a former town official of ours too, and a person whom I have high respect for, who indicated to me that she wanted to know what my view of this was going to be. I indicated to her that I had received a copy of town council's opinion, and I assumed that she had received a copy of it, and I invited her to provide me with a copy of any law that she has to the contrary, indicating that our town council's opinion was in any way deficient. And she did not provide me with any conflicting opinion. And I think, although she can speak for herself, I think she understands and acknowledges that that state law is controlling. And so her response was, and that doesn't mean that she can't accomplish the goal that she's seeking, either she or any other group of citizens, but it merely means that it has to be accomplished not by a change to our bylaw, but by the presentation or the request for the presentation of a special act to the legislature in order to have the legislature act and expand our Board of Selectmen from select board, from 3 members to 5 members. Ms. Necessian asked me if she could amend the article that she had presented in order to achieve her goal through that mechanism. Unfortunately, there's a fairly narrow provision in the law that requires for town meeting to consider only the action of an amendment to an article that is within the confines of the specific article. So you can tinker a little bit or fine-tune an article, but you can't present an entirely different article and have it treated within the same confines. So as much legalese as it sounds like, I could not allow her to bring a motion this evening before you to amend that petition, providing for a bylaw change to morph it into an article seeking a special act of the legislature. So to the extent that I take responsibility that her time has been spent between the last town meeting in mind and this one, anticipating that would be dealt with this evening, the fact of the matter is that I can't accept the petition in its present format, and I have to rule it as out of order. And I do that regretfully, but I have to do it because I'm bound by the law in the discharge of my responsibilities here. So I indicated to Ms. Necessian that while I don't advance or oppose articles or things of that nature, that I think that the town would be on fair notice that this issue is going to come back up. It's likely to come up at the special town meeting in October. It's likely to come up in the format of an article seeking to authorize the Board of Selectmen to petition the legislature for a special act to expand the Board of Selectmen from 3 members to 5 members. I understand that the Town Government Study Committee is examining this issue. I think they are on fair notice that to the extent that their work needs to be done within a particular time frame, it should be done in advance of the special town meeting, because this article is likely to come back in a different format in the special town meeting in October. So I apologize for the lengthy nature. Citizens' petitions are encouraged. I want the applicant to understand that I've given it every possible consideration, and she will have the cooperation of town council if she needs it to assist her in drafting the article, so that when it comes before town meeting in October, it'll be in a legally permissible format. I can encourage and debate and full debate of it. Hopefully we'll hear from the Government Study Committee and other individuals who are interested or affected by it. So I thank Ms. Necessian for her graciousness in dealing with me in my office, and I know she appreciates the attention that I've given the article. So I apologize for the length of it. It is late, but it's an important issue, and I wanted to make sure that it got a fair explanation. So I have to rule that petition out of order. So on that basis, I want to thank all of you for attending here this evening. I did become aware during my reluctant campaign to grab the seat again that there are a lot of people watching it at home, and although they're not here, I thank them for helping to create a further informed citizenry, and I thanks to the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen and to my able assistants here, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor? Aye. So voted. All opposed? Thank you, and good evening.